In a role-playing game, the character named Ako asks Rusian to marry her. Unfortunately, Rusian flatly refuses. Ako then asks why Rusian turned her down. Rusian explains that he has decided never to fall in love again. Ako understands but continues to insist on marrying him. Rusian wonders if Ako is even listening to what he just said. Ako assures him that she is listening. That's why she is being so bold. She believes that if Rusian marries her, it will be more enjoyable. Rusian is puzzled by Ako's confidence but still declines. At that moment, the Alley Cat Guild is in action defeating mobs. Their members include Rusian, Shmuin, Ako, and the guild master Apricot. Rusian prepares to attack with his sword. Fortunately, the shield he carries deflects 2 arrows shot by enemies. Rusian signals Schwein to attack. Schwein leaps and slashes his sword at the 2 archers, making them disappear instantly. Meanwhile, Rusian faces one mob but is soon overwhelmed and knocked back. Seeing this, Ako quickly heals him excessively, causing 3 enemies to surround her. Terrified, Ako is about to be attacked when Rusian suddenly strikes the mobs, telling Ako to retreat while healing him. Unexpectedly, the number of mobs in front of Rusian increases. He calls out to Apricot for help. Apricot channels power through her staff, unleashing a massive fireball toward the mobs attacking Rusian. The fireball incinerates all the mobs instantly. Ako praises Apricot for turning all the mobs into ashes. Schwein wonders how many enhancement items Apricot used on her staff to annihilate all the mobs. Apricot replies that she only used magic-boosting items, and if you buy 10, you get 1 free. Unfortunately, because Apricot arrived late, Rusian became a casualty. Ako quickly revives Rusian with her healing power. As Rusian regains consciousness, Ako hugs him and apologizes. Rusian says it's okay, especially since their mission is complete. Ako thanks him and expresses her love for him. That night, the players log off the game. The next morning at school, Hideki, who plays the character Rusian, announces to his friends that he has a wife. So remarks that Hideki changes wives every 3 months. Ryu asks if Hideki means a waifu. Takumi inquires if there are any anime recommendations for that season. Hideki suggests the historical anime Dogra Magra. So calls Hideki a true maniac, and Takumi even dubs him an open otaku. Hideki doesn't mind as he still enjoys it. Suddenly, Akane calls Otakus disgusting. Nanako tries to calm Akane down. Hideki explains that there are various kinds of otakus like liquor otakus, flower otakus, and others around the world. Akane insists that regardless, Hideki is still disgusting. Hideki's friends agree with her. Hideki can't believe how harsh his 3 friends are. Shortly after, their teacher, Yui, announces that there will be a morning assembly and asks all students to head to the gym. All the students hurry to the gym. While in the hallway, So tells his friends that Maeda from class 3 confessed to a female student and was flatly rejected. So suggests that Hideki might be a good match for a short, twin-tailed girl like Akane. Hideki says that if Akane were a tsundere, someone who is initially cold but gradually shows affection, he might be interested. But in reality, Akane is just stone cold. Akane turns and threatens to seriously hurt Hideki later. Hideki is startled and stops in his tracks, accidentally bumping into a girl from another class, Ako. Hideki quickly apologizes and a shy Ako runs away. During the assembly in the gym, Hideki steals glances at Ako, who turns away whenever she notices him looking. That morning, the student council president, Kyo, welcomes the students at the opening ceremony. After school, Hideki quickly returned to playing his online game. The game Hideki and others played was an online RPG called Legendary Age Orlais for short. While some features required payment, it was free to play, attracting many players who could explore the same world simultaneously. At that moment, Hideki was controlling his in-game character, Rusian, battling mobs. He alerted his guildmates to prepare for an attack. However, his 3 friends were engrossed in conversation, leaving Rusian to fend off the mobs alone. Ako shared with Schwein and Apricot that Rusian had given her a ring, claiming it would boost her resistance. Meanwhile, Rusian was defeated by the mobs due to his friends' inattentiveness. Later, Rusian and his friends gathered at a cafe. Ako asked how Rusian was doing. He replied that he wasn't okay, and that most of it was Ako's fault. She couldn't attack properly, heal the mobs instead, and was too busy chatting. Rusian mentioned that he died multiple times because of Ako's mistakes. Ako apologized, noting that fortunately, Rusian's level was high enough to mitigate the impact. She then clung to Rusian's arm. Schwein pointed out that tanking was the armor mate's job, so even if Rusian died, it wouldn't affect him. Rusian retorted that if their attacker were more competent, there wouldn't be any issues. Apricot mentioned she could eliminate everything as long as she had expensive cash items to enhance her magic. Schwein and Rusien jokingly called her a pay-to-win player. A year had passed since Rusien and Schwein, Apricot, and Aiko formed the Alley Cat Guild. They'd experienced many adventures together, growing close and enjoying each other's company. Aiko was Rusien's in-game wife. Although their marriage was just within the game, Rusien couldn't refuse her persistent proposals. In reality, Hideki struggled to interact with girls, yet in the game he had a wife. Aiko began talking to herself, and Apricot commented that Aiko and Rusien seemed inseparable that day. Rusien explained it was because Aiko wouldn't let go of him. Schwein teased them, calling them a new couple. Rusien emphasized that it was just a game, not real life. Schwein mused that perhaps Rusien couldn't get married in real life, so he sought solace in the game. Rusien was offended by Schwein's remark. Aiko interjected, suggesting that Schwein should just die, stating that normies should perish, and that associating with them brought bad luck. She believed such people were a blight on the world. Schwein clarified that he wasn't implying that and wasn't interested in romance. Rusien gently reminded Aiko not to project her disdain for normies onto their friends. Suddenly, Aiko lamented that Rusien had rejected her feelings repeatedly, causing her stress and shortening her lifespan. She mentioned proposing 10 times and being rejected each time, wondering why Rusien was so unwilling to marry her. Rusien suggested they revisit the beginning of their conversation. Aiko apologized and pleaded with Rusien not to divorce her. Schwein wondered why Rusien didn't just accept Aiko's proposal. Rusien explained that in-game marriage wasn't something he favored, especially since it was just a game, not reality. Schwein teased that perhaps Rusien couldn't marry in real life, so he sought refuge in the game. Rusien was irked by Schwein's comment. Aiko then revealed that Rusien had previously proposed to someone in Legendary Age. Rusien was surprised Aiko divulged that information. Apricot urged him to share more. Rusien recounted that he once confessed his love to a female character in-game, only to be flatly rejected. To his shock, the girl revealed she was actually an older man in real life, just curious about playing an online game. Since then, Rusien had been wary of online relationships. Hideki had learned his lesson. He would never trust that a girl in an online game was actually a girl again. Hearing his story, Schwein and Apricot burst into laughter. Apricot even joked that Rusien's past was dark, but still a memorable part of his teenage years. Rusien couldn't help but regret it. After all, the girl he confessed to was really cute, had great taste in gear, and was practically a role model for female characters. That experience left him so traumatized that he quit his previous guild and played solo for almost a year. Eventually, he came to a conclusion. As long as a character looked cute, he would accept it, even if the player behind it was actually a guy in real life. What mattered was that the cuteness made his gaming experience enjoyable. Aiko then asked if Rusien was mad at her for revealing his past. Rusien said it was fine. It was just something that happened online. Aiko then told him she truly loved him. Hideki was taken aback but quickly calmed himself to avoid getting too caught up in his feelings. Apricot suddenly realized why Rusien had been rejecting Aiko all this time. But Rusien insisted that it had nothing to do with real life. Aiko was Aiko in the game. Aiko then blurted out that she was actually a bookworm girl in real life. Schwein was confused as to why Aiko would admit something like that in a public chat. Even Rusien agreed it was a bit too much. Then out of nowhere, Apricot declared that she was a high school girl. Hearing that, Rusien refused to believe it, especially since Apricot used high-end cash items. Schwein and Aiko also didn't buy it. To prove it, Apricot suggested they meet up offline for the first ever in-person gathering of the Alley Cat Guild. That day, the members of the Alley Cat Guild gathered near the train station. Hideki messaged the others, letting them know he was standing by a large tree in front of the station. Not long after, a girl approached him and called out Rusien. Shocked, Hideki hesitantly admitted that he was indeed Rusien. The girl introduced herself as Aiko. Seeing the real Aiko for the first time, Hideki was completely stunned. Meanwhile, Aiko, realizing that the guy in front of her was really Rusien, got so excited that she immediately clung to him. Hideki quickly told Aiko to stop calling him Rusien in public. Suddenly, Akane appeared and asked if Hideki was Rusien. Hideki was shocked. Akane was also a guild member. Aiko asked if the two of them knew each other, but before they could answer, Kyo showed up and greeted them. Akane immediately called Kyo student council president, but Kyo corrected her, saying that at that moment, she wasn't the student council president, she was the guild master of Alley Cat Apricot. Kyo instantly recognized Rusien and Aiko, who was still clinging to him. That meant Akane was actually Schwein. Akane quickly protested, telling them not to call her Schwein in real life. The group then headed to a cafe for their first offline guild meeting. Ako was overjoyed to meet Rusian in real life, so much so that she kept touching his face. Kyo took charge of the introductions. She revealed that she was a second-year student at Megasaki High School and the student council president there. Even though they had all been close online, this was their first time meeting in person. Through good times and bad, they had always enjoyed playing together. Next, Akane introduced herself as a first year at Megasaki High. Kyo understood why Akane was embarrassed to say her in-game name out loud. After all, Schwein was German for pig. No girl would want to introduce herself as pig. It turned out that Akane had chosen the name Schwein without knowing its meaning. She just thought it sounded cool. She then blamed Kyo for not telling her sooner. Kyo had always assumed it was just a joke. In the end, Akane begrudgingly accepted the name Schwein but warned everyone, if anyone called her pig, she would chop them into pieces. Hideki had introduced himself as Rusian, and it turned out that saying his character name out loud was pretty embarrassing. He introduced himself as a first-year student at the same high school as Kyo. He also admitted that he didn't participate in any extracurricular activities, had no particular talents, and that his only hobby was playing online games. Next, Ako introduced herself, saying that she was also a first-year student at the same high school as everyone else. To everyone's surprise, her in-game character name was the same as her real name. Akane and Hideki were both shocked that someone would actually use their real name for a game character. Ako admitted that she didn't join any extracurricular activities and didn't have any friends at school. In fact, she even mentioned that sometimes when she went to school, she became the center of attention. Everyone was surprised to hear that. Hideki reassured her, saying that all of them were her friends. Ako was grateful and said she was really happy to have friends she could talk to. Hideki then brought up that Akane was actually quite popular since she was confessed to by a third-year student the other day. Ako immediately called Akane a pleb and Kyo agreed. Akane admitted that she rejected the confession because she had no interest in dating anyone. Hideki then asked if Maeda, the guy who was popular among the girls, wasn't her type. Akane reasoned that if she had a boyfriend, she would have less time to play online games. Akane then turned the question around and asked Hideki if he would reject someone if they confessed to him. Kyo and Ako immediately responded that of course he would. Hideki said that they were all way too honest. Ako then shared her idea on how to solve this issue. She suggested that Akane could just get married in the game just like Ako and Rusian did, so she wouldn't lose any gaming time and could still be with the person she loved. Akane found the idea disgusting. Meanwhile, Hideki still couldn't fully grasp the fact that the cute girl standing in front of him was actually his in-game wife. That day, the members of the Alley Cat Guild gathered offline for the first time at a cafe. After introducing themselves, they continued chatting casually. They all just found out that their guild master was actually the student council president at their school. Akane mentioned that Kyo was actually the daughter of their school principal. Kyo then revealed that her father was also the owner of the school. Hideki commented that Kyo must be rich, but Kyo disagreed, saying that her family only owned the school and a few companies. Akane understood why Kyo spent so much money buying in-game items. Her family was wealthy. However, Kyo clarified that the money she used to buy items was her own. She did initially ask her parents for capital, but she had already paid them back in full. Suddenly, Ako blurted out that people with such bright futures should just die. Hideki quickly snapped her out of it and Ako apologized, saying she got carried away. Kyo explained that her household had very strict rules, and her parents even decided who was suitable to be her friend. However, she worked hard to convince them to let her play online games, and thanks to that, she was able to meet everyone in the guild. Kyo admitted that she had no friends in the real world. Hearing this, Ako immediately cheered her up, saying they should fight together to take down all the so-called normal people. They both felt like kindred spirits. Seeing their growing bond made Akane feel a pang in her chest. Even Hideki had never wished for such a close friendship handshake. They then continued their conversation about online games. Akane believed that the most important factor in online battles was having a strong weapon, and that spending money to upgrade armor was inefficient. However, Hideki argued that armor was actually more crucial since choosing armor was much more complicated than picking a weapon. Akane stood by her opinion, saying it was better to level up their strength and grind at slightly higher level locations, but Hideki thought that would be too painful. The two kept debating until Kyo stepped in and suggested a better method than either of theirs. But instead of listening, Akane and Hideki told their rich player guildmate to stay out of it. Ako said that if she were to spend money, she would rather buy clothes so she could just let everything go and allow herself to be defeated. Of course, Hideki and Ako didn't agree with her at all. Kyo pointed out that since Ako was their healer, she also agreed that improving defense was important. Unfortunately, Rusian always ended up dead before Ako could heal him. Hideki argued that since Rusian was their main tank, he could take care of himself. He even joked that their healer was unreliable, which is why armor was important. Akane and Kyo had no counter-argument, so the discussion ended there. After leaving the cafe, Hideki apologized for initially assuming that everyone in the guild was male. Kyo was surprised, pointing out that she had mentioned it in the game, but Hideki hadn't believed her. Akane even remarked that Hideki's face instantly darkened when he saw them in person. Hideki had always thought that the game and real life were separate, but he realized that he genuinely enjoyed meeting everyone. He also came to understand that his in-game friends were actually impressive in real life as well. Akane immediately cringed at his words, calling them disgusting. Whether in-game or in real life, Akane's reactions were always the same. Kyo also thought that Rusian was just as cold toward girls in real life as he was online. Akane warned Hideki that she wouldn't forgive him if he acted overly familiar with her at school. Seeing how close Hideki and Akane seemed, Ako quickly clung to Hideki. Akane reassured her not to be jealous, saying she had no intention of stealing Ako's husband. After that, they all went their separate ways. As Hideki walked with Ako, she asked him if he had initially thought she was a guy too. Hideki admitted that he had actually thought she was an old man. Ako was shocked. She had told him she was a girl, so why hadn't he believed her? And why had he accepted her marriage proposal if that was what he thought? According to Hideki, even if Ako were a guy, it wouldn't matter to him. That statement shocked Ako. Hideki didn't mean it the way Ako thought, since the game and real life were two different worlds. Even if Ako was a guy in real life, in the game, Ako was still Ako. Ako then said that meant Hideki didn't care about age, gender, or anything else and liked her simply because he liked her. Hideki admitted it. Ako was delighted and said she wanted to be with Hideki because he was Rusian. She'd also said that even if Rusian wasn't a guy her age or someone different from what she imagined, she would still truly love him. Hideki thanked Ako, and for a moment, he almost got carried away, but he quickly reminded himself that the game and reality were different. He then urged Ako to head home since it was getting dark. That night, Hideki went back to playing online games. Rusian managed to defeat the enemies and Apricot and Schwein praised him. Rusian felt like playing the game was just as fun as before. Schwein mentioned that Ako's healing was still a bit slow, but he didn't mind. Apricot reassured Ako that sometimes, no matter how hard they tried, they wouldn't get results. Rusian also told Ako not to worry too much. At worst, he'd just lose some EXP from dying repeatedly. Ako apologized to Rusian, while Schwein and Apricot laughed at her. After the battle, they gathered at the bar. Kyo said she would log off since she had things to take care of at school the next morning. She also joked that if they saw her at school, they could call her master as much as they wanted. Schwein refused outright. Ako also wanted to leave to take a bath and go to sleep. Hearing the word bath, Rusian imagined something. Schwein teased him, asking what he was thinking about. Schwein then told Ako not to forget to wash off her sweat in the tub. Suddenly, Rusian said that Ako probably didn't even sweat because she wasn't a pig like Schwein. Schwein got angry at being called a pig. She warned Rusian that if he acted too familiar with her at school, she'd slice him up like a pig. Rusian promised not to say anything and to keep acting the same because the game and real life were separate. Schwein also reminded Rusian not to get too lovey-dovey with Ako, saying she'd feel bad if weird rumors about him started spreading. The next morning in class, Akane greeted Hideki. Hideki greeted her back, but then Akane suddenly questioned why he was talking to her. Hideki pointed out that Akane was the one acting weird. Nanako commented that Hideki and Akane seemed close. Akane scoffed, saying there was no way she could be close to a disgusting guy like him. Hideki finally gave up and said everything was his fault, and Akane walked away. So asked Hideki if he had just been rejected, but to him, it didn't matter since Hideki already had his irreplaceable 2D waifu. Hideki proudly said his wife was adorable. Just then, Ako appeared outside his classroom and called out to him as Rusian. So was confused, wondering who Rusian was. Ako quickly approached Hideki and greeted him using that name. Hideki turned away and told So that he didn't know her. Seeing no response, Ako moved closer and asked if Hideki wasn't feeling well. Hideki yelled at her to stop calling him that and demanded to know what she wanted. Ako instead mentioned that last night they had stayed together until late, shocking the entire class. Hideki quickly tried to explain that it wasn't what they were thinking. So asked what exactly Hideki and Ako's relationship was. Hideki pleaded with Ako not to answer that question, but Ako declared that Rusian, Hideki, was her beloved husband. Akane approached them, saying she had no idea about this Rusian thing, but told them to take their otaku talk outside. Hideki led Ako out, but Ako happily thanked Akane, calling her Schwein. She then excitedly pointed out that Shuan and Rusian were in the same class. Akane said she had no idea what Eiko was talking about and dragged her outside. Akane assumed Akane was mad because she hadn't used her full name, so she called her Shuin again. Akane screamed in frustration and Hideki tried to calm her down but accidentally also called her Shuin. Then Akane approached them and asked if the three of them knew each other. Akane immediately denied it, then quickly pulled Akane out of the classroom and told her to stop calling her Shuin. Once they were outside, Akane asked if she had done something wrong. Hideki explained that it was because she called Akane Shuin, and that she didn't seem to realize that it wasn't appropriate. Hideki clarified that Rusian and Shuin were their in-game names and told Akane to be more aware of the time and place. Akane responded by saying that her only friends were Rusian and Shuin. Hideki reiterated that the game world and the real world were different. Akane then questioned whether she and Shuin weren't friends just because they always played and chatted together. Akane didn't mean it that way, but her response made Akane sad. Akane suddenly realized that she and Rusian were nothing more than strangers who had no real connection at all, even though she loved him and had even married him. Overwhelmed by the realization, Eiko started crying. Akane and Hideki discussed how to handle the situation, and Hideki suggested just going along with it for now. Akane laughed and reassured Akane that she was an important member of their guild and also their friend. Akane, still crying, insisted that it was all a lie. However, Hideki told her that she was still Akane, and in the game, she was his beloved wife. Akane clarified that what they meant was that they just didn't want to use their in-game names in real life, especially at school, where Akane was known as someone who didn't play games. Akane then asked how she should address them. Akane told Akane to call her Akane, just like everyone else. Akane hesitated and asked if they were still friends, to which Akane reassured her that they were. Hideki then told Akane to call them Hideki. At first, Hideki addressed Akane by her last name, but Eiko requested that he call her by her first name instead. She added that if he refused, she would just keep calling him Rusian. Left with no choice, Hideki agreed. Hearing this, Eiko immediately hugged him, saying that this was exactly why she loved him so much. Akane then asked if she was allowed to talk to them at school. Akane said it was fine as long as it wasn't about online games. But Eiko refused, saying she had nothing else to talk about besides games. Akane suggested that she could talk about anything she wanted while they were playing. Akane also pointed out that, as her husband, Hideki should spend time with Akane when she was free. Akane then asked Hideki if he would spend time with her. Hideki agreed, but only on the condition that she wouldn't call him Rusian or talk about being his wife. Akane hugged Hideki again, saying he was truly on her side. Suddenly, their teacher, Yui, reminded them that class was about to start. The three of them quickly returned to their classroom. Later, Eiko told Hideki that she had made him a lunchbox and invited him to eat together. Hideki was surprised and asked why she did that. Akane simply replied that it was because Rusian was her husband. Akane teased Hideki, saying he was probably thinking the same thing she was. Hideki immediately countered, saying he already knew what Akane was thinking. Eiko just couldn't distinguish between the game world and real life. During the lunch break, the three of them went to the student council room to see Kyo and explain everything. Akane told Kyo that Eiko couldn't differentiate between the game world and reality and even went as far as making lunch for her husband. Kyo commented that making lunch for one's husband was normal if they had been together for a long time, fallen in love, and eventually gotten married. However, she also noted that in an online game, she wasn't sure if Akane had actually fallen in love with someone whose real name and face she didn't even know. Akane quickly denied this, explaining that she knew Rusian, they always chatted, and their hearts were connected. To her, it was a pure kind of love, more genuine than what ordinary people had. Kyo admitted that Akane had a point and noted that Akane truly loved Hideki for who he was. However, Hideki argued that everything happened inside a game, where appearances and stats were different, and where he was always paying attention to Akane. Of course, that would make Akane think about him more. Akane strongly disagreed, pointing out that sometimes she played without Rusian, but whenever that happened, everyone else would leave her behind. Rusian, on the other hand, was always by her side, no matter how many mistakes she made. Forgetting things and doing things, that's exactly why Akane loves Rusian so much. Akane sarcastically wished them a happy life together and was ready to leave. Hideki tried to stop her, but Akane just called him a maniac. Not willing to take that insult, Hideki started arguing with her. Curious, Eiko asked Kyo what a maniac was, and Kyo explained that it referred to a game-obsessed guy who was desperate to find a girl. Suddenly, Hideki proposed an idea they needed to change the way Akane thought. They had to help her understand that the game world and the real world were two separate things. Akane asked how they were supposed to do that, and Hideki explained that they needed to show her that Rusian in the game and Hideki in real life were two completely different entities. Kyo then suggested that Eiko should join an extracurricular club focused on modern communication through online gaming. She invited them all to visit the club room, where she would be the club president. The club members would be Hideki, Akane, and Ako, and their activities would mainly involve playing online games after school and meeting up during their free time. Akane and Hideki found the idea strange, but Eiko was completely amazed by Kyo's initiative. Akane wasn't interested and decided to go home, saying that to her, online gaming was just a hobby. Kyo challenged her by asking if she wasn't rejecting relationships because it would cut into her gaming time. She then pointed out that if Akane simply added 2 extra hours to her gaming time, she could increase her progress significantly. Akane insisted she wanted to live a normal student life at school. However, Kyo warned her that if she fell behind in level, Schwein wouldn't be able to play with them anymore. Intrigued, Hideki was drawn in by the high-performance gaming PCs designed specifically for online games. They kept pressuring Akane until she finally agreed to join, on the condition that she could use the computers however she wanted. Kyo then orchestrated all of this as a way to highlight the differences between the game world and real life. By playing the game while being physically together in the same room, the contrast between reality and the game would become more apparent. Ako, however, was skeptical and said she didn't think it would change anything. But Hideki argued that she was being too naive and this experience would break the illusion she had built around herself. In response, Ako declared that she would prove her love for Rusian was the purest love of all. That night, Hideki logged into the game again. Rusian was looking for the others, who still hadn't joined the party yet. Suddenly, he ran into a familiar face, the cat-eared girl character who had once rejected his confession of love. That day, Rusian ran into Nekohime, the cat girl who had once rejected his confession. Nekohime greeted him cheerfully and said she was happy to see that he was still playing the game. She had been worried that he might have quit. Rusian realized once again how cute Nekohime appeared, despite knowing that in reality, he was actually a guy. Rusian admitted that the incident back then had been a valuable lesson for him. It made him firmly decide never to mix up the game world with real life because the two were completely different. Nekohime laughed at his words. Rusian then asked if she hadn't logged in for a long time. It turned out that Nekohime had been busy with work, and just that day, some friends had been talking about the game in real life, which made her decide to log in again. She was really happy to meet Rusian once more. The next morning at school, Eiko suddenly showed up in Hideki's classroom. Surprised, Hideki asked her what she was doing there. Ako simply replied that she had come to greet her master. Hideki immediately reminded her that such things were only acceptable in the game world and didn't apply to real life. He firmly asked her to stop. He pointed out that calling him master sounded more like a servant addressing a lord rather than something between a married couple. Ako then tried calling him darling instead, but Hideki still ignored her. He told her that kind of thing was still inappropriate since Ako had not yet earned the right to say it. Their conversation quickly became the center of attention in Hideki's class. Nanako turned to Akane and asked if Hideki and Ako knew each other in the game, but Akane pretended not to know anything about it. Not long after, Ms. Yui, the teacher, entered the classroom and greeted the students. Ako then excused herself and left. Ms. Yui asked Hideki to step outside for a talk. She asked if he often met up with Ako. Hideki quickly explained that it wasn't like that. Ms. Yui then told him to be kind to Ako, as it seemed like she didn't have many friends and had been skipping school quite often lately. Just then, Kyo appeared and greeted them. She asked Ms. Yui about her response to the request to become the advisor for the online gaming club. Ms. Yui explained that she was already representing the literature club, but Kyo insisted that she should do it under her name instead. After school, Hideki and his friends gathered in the online gaming club room. Ako was typing out her messages while saying them out loud, which made Hideki ask her to stop doing that. Akane was excited and suggested they all go on an adventure in the Bloom volcano. Kyo encouraged everyone to get ready. Hideki then asked Ako to check her equipment. When he looked at it, he was confused as to why Ako was wearing a waterproof cloak when they were heading to a volcano. Ako explained that the cloak was a gift from Rusian, so she was going to wear it proudly. Hideki told her to switch to a fireproof cloak instead, but Ako refused, saying that it wasn't cute. Akane came over and scolded Ako for caring too much about appearances. She even commented on Ako's sparkly pink staff. Ako had chosen it because she thought it looked adorable when attacking enemies. It even made star effects appear. After checking her equipment, Ako finally realized that her gear was way too weak. Akane pointed out that she was treating this like a game rather than taking it seriously. Hideki offered to lend Ako his Staff of Virtue, but she revealed that she already had one. Hideki insisted that she should use it. Meanwhile, Kyo was simply laughing at their funny conversation. Soon, their game characters arrived at the volcano. Akko sulked, complaining that her new cloak wasn't cute at all. Just then, a monster appeared. Apricot stepped forward and proudly showed off her new Meibo staff, which could unleash powerful flames. Akane quickly grabbed Kyo's hand, stopping her from using a premium skill. Apparently, almost all of Apricot's items were premium. Hideki also told Kyo not to use cash items in front of them. Kyo was annoyed by their restrictions, reminding them that she was both the student council president and their guild master. Schwein eagerly showed off her sword, clearly full of energy that day. More monsters suddenly swarmed toward them. Apricot reluctantly agreed not to use her premium skills but decided to strengthen her staff using her cash items. She unleashed her perfect blizzard ability, but the snowfall effect from her staff barely had any impact on the monsters. Suddenly, one of the monsters jumped behind Apricot and attacked her. Rusien and Schwein immediately rushed in to fight it off. Apricot regretted holding back. If she had just used her premium skills, she could have defeated all the monsters easily. Rusien then called out to Akko, telling her to revive Apricot. However, Akko hesitated. She was struggling because the game settings were different from what she was used to. Finally, Hideki approached Akko's seat and showed her where the revive and heal skills were. Akko commented on how skilled Hideki was at playing the game. Akane felt that the day had been even more exhausting than regular level grinding. Kyo pointed out that the second run was much better and that their efficiency had improved, but Akane argued that it was only because Hideki was essentially controlling Akko. Akko praised Hideki for a job well done and said that she felt more useful to everyone that day. As Hideki and Akko walked home together, Akko mentioned that from now on, she wouldn't skip school anymore. She was happy because Hideki, or rather Rusien, was always there to support her. No matter what happened, as long as they were together, it wouldn't be a problem. Hideki quickly clarified that he had never agreed to that. Akko then wondered aloud if Hideki would prefer them to be a jobless married couple. Hideki sighed and said that if he had to choose, he would go with that option. Akko teased him, telling him to say it over and over again. Hideki just smiled and admitted that he was starting to get used to being called Rusien. Hideki then suggested stopping by the supermarket to grab some cold drinks. As they drank together, Akko remarked that it still felt like they were inside legendary age. Hideki called it a fantasy world. Akko then asked if they seemed like a married couple. Hideki disagreed, saying that they weren't old enough to get married yet. Maybe they just looked like a couple dating. His words made Akko a little surprised. Hideki reminded her that it was getting late and that her parents might be worried about her. However, Akko casually revealed that her parents were hardly ever home. If they were, there was no way she could play games every night. Hideki recalled what Ms. Yui had said earlier about Akko not having many friends. He decided to escort her home right away. The next day in the club room, the guild members were back to playing their online game. After completing a mission, Hideki asked for a short break. Kyo pointed out that thanks to Akko's improved healing skills, their party wasn't dying as often. Akane commented that Akko's previous gear had been absolutely terrible. Akane went to the restroom for a bit, and when she returned, they resumed playing. Suddenly, Schwein was shocked to see her character dressed in a bear costume. Akko found it adorable. Rusien called out for Schwein to hurry up and fight the monsters. Schwein's weapon was shaped like a green onion, but its power was unmatched. Apricot had maxed out its strength, much to Schwein's confusion. Schwein wondered why Apricot loved wasting money on such weird things. That day's mission was successfully completed. Akko praised Hideki for his efforts, but Hideki told her that she had done a good job as well. Akko was delighted to receive his praise. Akane, however, was skeptical, wondering if this whole club had any real meaning. She reminded them that the original purpose of the club was to help Akko separate the game world from reality, but instead, it seemed to be doing the opposite. Akko insisted that it didn't matter as long as they were having fun. Kyo, on the other hand, saw the situation as a bit dangerous. She pointed out that the club was on the verge of being disbanded because they still didn't have a faculty advisor. Without an advisor, the club wasn't officially recognized and it might get shut down soon. Kyo wanted to achieve their goal before that happened. Later that night, Hideki logged into the game again. Rusien sought out Nekohime for advice and shared his concerns about Akko's inability to distinguish between the game world and reality. Nekohime understood the situation, saying she had heard similar stories before. She warned that Akko was in a dangerous state. One wrong step and she could fall into complete delusion. Nekohime reassured Rusien, telling him that she knew he was a good person. She encouraged him to believe in himself. The next day in the club room, Hideki asked Akko to sit in front of him. He firmly explained that he was not Rusien, he was Hideki. He also reminded her that their club would soon be shut down, and he wanted to tell her one last time that the game world and the real world were two separate things. While they were married in the game, at school they were just friends. He asked Akko to treat him like any other friend. He also warned her that if she ever met someone in the game who she didn't know in real life, she should never let her guard down. Akko asked Hideki if someone had said something to him earlier. She was convinced that Hideki or Rusean must have met someone who told him something, and she even suspected that person was a girl. Hideki denied it, but Akko remained confident that her guess was right. Akko said that a wife could tell when her husband was lying just by looking into his eyes. Hideki reassured her that he wasn't lying, but Akko insisted on knowing the person's name because she wanted to thank them for helping her husband. Out of everything Akko had said, that statement was the scariest to Hideki. Akko declared that if Hideki were defeated, her rage would burn like fire. Hideki thought Akko was acting strange. Rusean then went to meet Nekohime again and told her what had happened with Akko. Nekohime laughed and said that Rusean was easy to read. As Nekohime was about to leave, Akko suddenly appeared behind Rusean and said that she had seen the woman. Akko asked if Rusean liked the cat-eared woman and if that was his type. Rusean told her not to imitate her because she was just an acquaintance, and he also revealed that she was the one he had once proposed to. Akko was shocked and called it an insult, saying that the woman had broken Rusean's innocent heart. She even wanted to teach her a lesson, but Rusean stopped her. He refused to let Akko bother Nekohime. Akko understood and quickly left because she had something important to take care of that day. The next morning, Ms. Yui informed Hideki that Akko had skipped school again. That day, Hideki discussed Akko's absence with Kyo and Akane. Kyo mentioned that Akko had still been playing the game the night before. Hideki was surprised to see that Akko was online and had joined them in-game. Rusean asked why she wasn't at school, and Akko replied that she had an important matter to attend to. Rusean pressed her for details, and Akko revealed that she had planned an offline meeting with someone she knew in the LA game. Apricot asked if that person knew them as well, but Akko said it seemed unlikely. The person she was meeting was a guy. Everyone was shocked that Akko was meeting an unfamiliar man. Rusean immediately tried to stop her, saying it was dangerous, and Schwein reminded her that she was already married. Akko acknowledged that Rusean was her husband, but only in the game. She argued that the game world and real life were separate. Akko then asked Rusean what the difference was between the game world and reality. Schwein thought Akko wasn't acting like herself. Akko bid farewell, and Rusean reluctantly let her go. Akane was confused as to why Hideki allowed Akko to meet a stranger. Hideki reasoned that it was good for Akko to understand the difference between the game and reality, believing that everything would turn out fine. That afternoon, Hideki grew frustrated as he recalled Akko's question about the difference between the game world and reality. Before long, Akane and Kyo approached him, having discovered that the offline meeting was scheduled for 6:00 p.m. at the same place where they had held their own offline gathering. They urged Hideki to stop the meeting, but Hideki felt he had no right to interfere. Akane reminded him that Akko was his wife, but Hideki argued that it was only in the game and in real life they were just friends. Akane was furious, calling him weak and pathetic. She couldn't believe that Hideki was such a worthless man. She then asked if Hideki liked Akko and told him that if he did, he had to go and stop her. Akane pressed further, asking if Hideki would really let Akko be in danger. Kyo chimed in, saying that while Hideki and Rusean were different, Rusean still existed within Hideki, and so did his feelings for Akko. Hideki said that it was something he couldn't accept because after meeting the real Akko, talking to her and touching her, he actually started to like her. At that moment, Hideki wasn't worried about Akko in the game, but rather Akko in the real world. He was very concerned and didn't want her to get hurt. Akane then told Hideki to hurry and go. She turned to Kyo and said that both Akko and Hideki were such troublesome people. Hideki ran as fast as he could to find Akko. When he arrived, he called out to her and said that as her husband, he did not approve of her meeting an unfamiliar man. He admitted that the game world and reality were different, but even so, Akko was still his wife in the game. Suddenly, Ms. Yui appeared and was shocked to learn that Rusean was actually Hideki. But what was even more surprising was that Akko then announced that Nekohime was actually Ms. Yui. Hideki, taken aback, exclaimed that Nekohime was supposed to be an old man. However, Akko was certain from looking into her eyes that Nekohime was indeed a woman. Ms. Yui then admitted that she was Nekohime. She had spoken to Akko and Lei the day before. Hideki couldn't believe that Nekohime was actually Ms. Yui, which meant that he had once proposed to his own teacher. Ms. Yui apologized for causing confusion with her Hode status in the game. Akko, still upset, accused Ms. Yui of toying with Rusean's heart. Calling her a witch, she immediately charged at her in an attempt to avenge Rusean. Ako swung her staff, but seeing this, Hideki quickly stepped in to protect Ms. Yui. Ms. Yui reacted swiftly, striking Ako on the neck, causing her to fall. Kyo and Akane arrived just in time to witness everything. The next day, Kyo informed everyone that Ms. Yui would be the advisor for their modern communication club, which focused on online games. Akane felt relieved that their club wouldn't be disbanded after all. Ako was still upset and declared that she wouldn't let that woman get near her husband ever again. Hideki sighed and told Ako to reflect on her actions, reminding her how lucky they were that yesterday's incident didn't blow out of proportion. Ms. Yui agreed to be the club's advisor, but on one condition. All members had to attend school as regularly as possible. Ako reluctantly agreed. They were all happy that they could continue playing online games together. Ako then asked Hideki to come to her house to meet her parents, but Hideki refused. Ako then asked if she could go to Hideki's house instead and meet his parents. Annoyed, Hideki reminded her once again that the game world and reality were completely different. That day, Hideki told a story about what happened after Rusian was rejected by Neko Hime. For a long time, Rusian was heartbroken and played solo. Eventually, Rusian approached a guild intending to join them. Someone there said he would interview him first. The man first asked why Rusian wanted to join their guild. Rusian explained that playing solo had been lonely and he thought that by joining a guild he could dedicate himself entirely to the game. The man then asked what Rusian did in real life. Rusian replied that he was a high school student. The man pointed out that since Rusian needed to log out for meals and showers and couldn't log in at night, he might not be a good fit for their guild. He mentioned that the usual grinding session lasted about 3 hours, which meant Rusian wouldn't be able to keep up. Rusian chuckled and said maybe if he dropped out of school, he could match their pace. The man then revealed that many members in their guild had already quit their jobs and school just to play games. Then the man asked Rusian if he knew about reincarnation. Rusian explained that reincarnation was when a player reached the maximum level, then created a new character while carrying over their previous skills. The man confirmed that many players in their guild did exactly that. Hearing this, Rusian realized that the guild was too intense for him, so he decided to withdraw. After hearing the story from Hideki, Ako commented that the guild sounded extreme. Hideki agreed, saying it was an intense and terrifying world, but not everything about it was scary. Just as Rusian was about to leave, the man told him that even though Rusian wasn't part of their guild, they were still fellow players and he was always welcome if he ever needed help. Suddenly, Ako said that the guild seemed like a good fit for her, as she could live just for playing online games like the people in that guild. Hideki was baffled as to why Ako, who had just started attending school again, was already thinking about skipping. Ako grinned and said that even if she dropped out and left everything behind, she still had Rusian to support her. Just then, Ako suddenly shouted in shock. She had forgotten her wallet at home. At that moment, Nanako overheard Ako's scream and saw her standing with Hideki. Ako reassured herself that it wasn't a big deal since she could just sell some unnecessary items to get enough money to buy a drink. She started mimicking the motion of pressing a keyboard as if she were in a game. Seeing this, Hideki quickly reminded her that they were in the real world, not a game. Later that day in the club room, Hideki told Ms. Yui that Ako's condition was getting worse. She still struggled to differentiate between the game world and reality, even when trying to buy a drink that morning. Hideki admitted that he had also experienced similar moments like waking up late and thinking he could teleport to school. Kyo added that sometimes when she wanted something, she unconsciously looked for a buy button. Ms. Yui was exasperated. The whole purpose of the Modern Communication Club through online games was to help Ako understand the difference between the real world and the game, but now they were all struggling with it. She even suggested disbanding the club and making them quit gaming entirely. Of course, Kyo immediately rejected that idea. Ms. Yui then told them to start their club activities and left to attend a meeting. Akane speculated that Ms. Yui must have felt burdened by the situation. Hideki admitted that everything was their fault. Kyo then called for a club meeting and proposed a new system, gacha. Akane and Hideki were skeptical, thinking it was just a waste of money. But Kyo argued that gacha was filled with hope, the kind that online players chased by spending just a little bit of money. Ako wanted to try it but didn't have any money. Kyo, convinced by Ako's enthusiasm, even offered to fund her account. Seeing that, Hideki became interested in trying it himself. He wanted to test his luck and said he would give whatever he got to Kyo. After Kyo made the purchase, she told them to begin their online game club tradition, rolling the gacha 100 times. After finishing their club activities that day, Hideki and Ako walked home together. Ako was frustrated that she didn't get a single rare item, and to her, it felt just like her real life. No matter what she did, the results were always disappointing. Hideki reassured her. saying that everyone felt the same way about their lives. Ako, however, declared that life was just a terrible game and she wanted to quit playing it. Hideki suggested getting ice cream to cheer her up, but Ako realized she had forgotten her wallet. Without hesitation, Hideki handed his ice cream to her. The next morning in class, So greeted Hideki by calling him Rusian. Takumi then chimed in, asking if Hideki's girlfriend had arrived yet. Hideki quickly clarified that Ako wasn't his girlfriend, but Ryu jokingly insisted that Ako was his wife. His friend started teasing him when suddenly, Akane entered the classroom. Hideki greeted her, but she ignored him. Nanako apologized to Hideki, explaining that Akane was just in a good mood. Hideki shrugged it off, saying he was used to it. His friends started gossiping about how Hideki was talking a lot with Nanako, and they were convinced he was cheating. They even suggested telling Ako about it. Hideki was shocked when he suddenly spotted Ako standing at the classroom door, calling out his name. After school, Hideki, Akane, and Kyo gathered in the club room. Akane referred to the computer there as a war machine, saying that if a computer ran smoothly, it deserved a powerful name. She even admitted she wanted to take it home. Kyo reminded her that it belonged to the school, so that wasn't an option. A short while later, Ako arrived looking exhausted and immediately approached Hideki, asking him to heal her. She explained that her classmates had been asking why she often visited another classroom. They suspected she had a boyfriend and were curious about what he was like. Ako felt like they were just teasing her, but Akane pointed out that in a group of girls, having a boyfriend was like having a character role. If Ako played alone, socializing would become easier. She even suggested Ako should proudly say that her boyfriend was amazing. Ako insisted she wasn't trying to hide her relationship with Hideki. On the contrary, she wanted everyone to know. However, she didn't appreciate the way her classmates spoke to her as someone who preferred to be alone. She felt like she had built walls around herself, yet they kept pushing against them, and she didn't know how to respond. Kyo, being blunt, said there was no point asking her for advice since no one in her class even dared to approach or talk to her. Suddenly, there was a knock at the club room door. Akane was shocked to see Nanako walk in looking for her. Nanako mentioned that she had noticed Akane acting suspiciously before entering the room, which made her curious about what was going on. She asked if it was a computer club. Kyo explained that it was actually the Modern Communication Through Online Gaming Club, basically an online gaming club. Akane was annoyed that Kyo had revealed that information. Kyo, on the other hand, found it amusing how flustered Akane was and even called her Schwein. Nanako was confused by the nickname. Akane demanded that Kyo stop calling her that in front of other people. Nanako noticed that the computer monitors displayed legendary age, and she asked if everyone in the room played online games. Hideki confirmed it without thinking. Akane accidentally called Hideki by his in-game name, Rusian. Nanako was surprised and asked if that was a special nickname club members used for each other. Panicking, Akane quickly clarified that she wasn't actually part of the club, she was just an observer, making sure that normal people like Nanako didn't get caught up in weird places like that. She then hurriedly tried to push Nanako out of the room. Feeling defeated, Akane muttered that her high school life was over. Meanwhile, Ako and Rusian had already started playing their game. They were waiting for Schwein and Apricot to log in. Rusian assumed that Kyo and Schwein would be joining them that day, considering how exhausted Akane had been after the earlier events. Rusian commented that just sitting around waiting was getting boring. Ako then suggested they go somewhere together. They jumped from the sky and dove deep into the ocean, admiring the underwater scenery. But before they knew it, they got sucked into the mouth of a giant whale. Before long, they resurfaced. Rusian was thrilled to have ridden an airship, seen an underwater temple, and experienced being blasted out by a whale. After that, they visited the city of August. It had been a long time since they last saw so many new players around. Ako compared it to a honeymoon, but Rusian asked her to call it a date instead. Ako felt excited and asked if it was really a date, to which Rusian replied that it was just a figure of speech. Ako was happy to be walking together like this. It reminded her of the first time they met. Back then, it was a fated encounter when Ako was being attacked by monsters, and Rusian defeated them like a prince. Rusian told her to stop making things up. At that time, Ako was waving frantically like a struggling new player, and Rusian had simply asked if she was okay. Then Ako asked how to log out of the game, and Rusian had explained how to do it. The next day, Ako started following him everywhere, and that was how things actually happened. Ako called that love. Rusian told her not to confuse stalking with love. Ako then asked if her husband was doubting his wife's love. Rusian said Ako's love was so intense it made him feel suffocated. The two of them went to an inn. As they entered the hallway, they saw two people in a room staring at each other on a bed. Akko asked Rusian why they were looking at each other like that, but Rusian couldn't answer. Akko pointed out that since she and Rusian were a married couple in the game, it was totally fine for them to do what couples normally do in the game. In other words, they could have romantic chats. Rusian hoped Akko wouldn't suggest things like that, but Akko insisted that they should be able to express their feelings to each other. Akko then gave an example of a romantic chat, Rusian slowly touching her with his fingers, causing the muscles in her back to melt from the sensation. Rusian immediately told her to stop because if she said things like that, he would start imagining it and it would get stuck in his head. They quickly left the inn. Akko apologized to Rusian, but Rusian said they should never have talked about that in the first place. As they walked, they ran into Nekohime. Nekohime asked what the two of them were doing there, and Akko answered that they were on a date. Moments later, a group of people approached Rusian. A man named Claude drew his sword toward Rusian's face and asked what he had done to make Nekohime uncomfortable. Rusian insisted he hadn't done anything. He then asked Nekohime who these people were. Nekohime explained that they were former members of a guild she used to run. Since it had been a long time since they disbanded, she had contacted them, and they had decided to return. They were the Nekohime Guardians, and they threatened Rusian, saying that if he dared to touch Nekohime, there would be consequences. Rusian assured them he had no intention of bothering her and suggested to Akko that they leave. Nekohime called out to Rusian, saying that her guild members were just joking. As they walked away, Rusian remarked that Nekohime seemed like a princess. Akko said she didn't mean to be a princess, just being Rusian's wife was enough to make her happy. Suddenly, Rusian heard a girl being attacked by monsters. Without hesitation, he drew his sword and took down the monsters. The girl thanked Rusian. Meanwhile, Hideki assumed that the girl wasn't used to chatting or using her starting equipment. He figured she must be a new player. He then saw her name, Stet. The girl greeted Rusian. Akko immediately asked if Rusian knew her. Rusian asked Stet if they had met before, and she nodded. Seeing this, Akko suspected Rusian was cheating. Rusian insisted he wasn't and that he would never doubt his wife's love. Stet then asked what she should do next. Since she was a new player, Rusian couldn't just leave her alone. He asked if she knew the basic controls, but it turned out she wasn't very familiar with them. Rusian explained that Stet was a close-range fighter just like him. The basics included normal attacks, guarding, countering, and using smash attacks. He also told her that she could attack from a distance using firearms. The key to combat, he explained, was to start with normal attacks, then guard when the enemy was about to strike. When faced with a close-range skill, she should use counterattacks. And when the enemy's defense was down, she should use a smash attack. The next day in the club room, Akane looked really excited. Akko asked if something good had happened to her. Akane happily shared that Nanako had promised not to tell anyone about what happened yesterday, which meant her high school life was safe. Hideki warned her to be more careful so that no one else would find out. Akane confidently said that she had checked her surroundings 3 times before entering the club room. Just then, Kyo walked in, startling Akane. The 4 of them started playing their online game. Schwein was pumped up and urged them to catch up on everything they had missed yesterday. Suddenly, Seth appeared, walked right up to Rusian, and grabbed his hand. That, of course, made Akko jealous. That day, Seth approached Rusian and immediately grabbed his hand. Apricot then asked if she was a friend of Rusian. Rusian explained that Seth seemed like a new player, so he had to accompany her for a while. Schwein offered to teach her, but Seth said she preferred Rusian because he was kind. The next day in the club room, Akko suggested playing a different game. Akane pointed out that their club was an online gaming club, not an LA club. Hideki then asked what kind of game Akko wanted to play. Akko said she wanted to play something thrilling. Kyo suggested Ultra Force, an FPS game. Akko admitted she had never played a game like that before. Kyo told Akko, just think of all the enemies as ordinary people. And Akko took that advice to heart. The 4 of them started playing with their team called Team Deathmatch. As soon as they began, Kyo and Akane were immediately defeated by enemies. It turned out that their positions had already been detected. The enemies quickly surrounded Hideki, but suddenly, Akko started shooting at the 3 enemies from the rooftop. Hideki was shocked that Akko was able to take down the enemies from such a long distance. Akko cheered, saying that this game seemed like the perfect fit for her. That night, Hideki ended up staying up late playing Ultra Force. The next day, he was feeling sleepy at school. He was surprised that Akko had taken such an interest in an FPS game. Then he noticed Akko watching him from outside the classroom door. Curious, Hideki went to her and asked what she was doing there. Akko said she thought an enemy might show up at any moment. Hideki suspected that she was getting too immersed in the game. Ako looked out the window and saw two students walking by, immediately considering them as approaching enemies. She said that if this were Ultra Force, she would have shot them on sight. Hideki quickly stopped her from thinking like that. Nanako then greeted Hideki, asking if there was a club meeting yesterday because she had been waiting for them at the usual game spot. That was when Hideki realized that Nanako was actually the player behind Set in Legendary Age. Hideki was surprised and asked why she did it. Nanako explained that she noticed Hideki and the others seemed to be having fun, especially Akane, who was completely absorbed in the game. Hearing that, Akane felt like her high school life was over. Nanako commented that in the game, Akane seemed reliable and totally different from how she was in class. Hideki thanked her. Then Nanako asked if Hideki and Ako were only a couple in the game. She suddenly hugged Hideki and said that Ako wasn't this close to him in real life, was she? Hideki quickly pulled away and told Ako to calm down. But Ako called Hideki an idiot and ran off. Later, Hideki and the others told Ms. Yui about what happened. Nanako didn't expect Ako to get that angry. Ms. Yui explained that Ako wasn't mad, she was in shock. Akane guessed that Ako might have felt like Nanako was stealing Hideki from her. Nanako assured them that she had no interest in Hideki whatsoever, not even a little. Akane pointed out that if the situation hadn't involved Ako, it wouldn't have turned into such a big deal. Nanako then suggested they visit Ako at her house. Hideki thought that would only make her more stubborn. Ms. Yui advised them to give Ako some time. Maybe after cooling down, she would think more rationally, and then they could figure out what to do next. During class, Hideki, Akane, and Nanako still couldn't stop thinking about Ako. During club hours, Ms. Yui told Hideki and the others that most problems arise from misunderstandings. Hideki said that if they just explained everything to Ako, the issue should be resolved. Akane admitted that she had no idea what else to do. She had even tried calling Ako, but Ako wasn't answering. So Hideki decided to search for Ako in the online game. He called out to her and found her. Ako invited him to level up together. Rusien explained that Nanako, or rather Set, had no romantic interest in him whatsoever. Ako replied that it didn't matter anymore because she had already given up. She decided to leave the world where they weren't husband and wife. Ako declared that she would be reincarnating. She wanted to level up to the max and bet everything on her next life. Rusien had no idea what she meant by that. Ako explained that she was going to reincarnate in LA and become a new character, then be reborn as a cheerful and popular person. Ako's goal was her dream in her next life. Rusien then asked if Ako had already given up on real life. Ako wanted to drop out of school and from then on live in the game LA, saying she didn't need real life anymore. Rusien urged Ako to calm down, but Ako was already convinced that as long as she had LA, she would keep living. Rusien asked Ako not to be obsessed with this idea, but she insisted on fighting for reincarnation. Then Ako deactivated her chat. She deliberately ignored interactions, and it seemed like she was completely shutting herself off inside the game. Kyo realized that the club had backfired on them. However, Miss Yui said that wasn't the case. It wasn't that Ako was under attack, but rather that she was just closing herself off. According to Miss Yui, Ako's behavior actually showed that she was progressing. Akane believed that Ako didn't think Nanako had taken Hideki away from her. Hideki thought that Ako was sulking, but this had turned into a much bigger problem than he had expected. Her emotions had spiraled out of control. Miss Yui also thought the same and believed that there was one guy who understood everything and could handle the situation. Hideki was surprised that he was being entrusted with full responsibility as a student. He then asked to be allowed to handle things in his own way. That day, Akane walked home with Hideki. Akane said that Ako probably realized how slow she was, how she often daydreamed, had trouble remembering things, and quickly forgot anything she had learned. So she imagined that the players in love who gathered with her would slowly disappear from her life. But for Ako, Hideki was different from the others. In the game, when Hideki said, "Let's try again next time," that meant there would definitely be a next time. To Ako, that was the same as Hideki accepting her, even though she was useless in the real world. If Hideki was really that kind of person, then Ako would want to stay with him forever. She even happily said so. For Akane, it was the same. She felt like she could always be with Hideki. Then realizing what she had just said, Akane was startled and quickly clarified that by being together, she meant playing together, club activities, and other things. She told Hideki not to take it the wrong way. Akane then said, simply put, Hideki was stuck with her, and she was stuck with a shut-in girl who was also a gaming addict. She asked Hideki to make sure to bring Ako back to them. Hideki promised he would. Akane told him to do it in return for her. The next morning, Hideki went to Ako's house and was about to press the doorbell when Ako's mother suddenly asked who he was. Nervously, Hideki introduced himself. Ako's mother smiled and assumed that Hideki must be Ako's husband. She invited Hideki inside to talk. Apparently, Ako had already told her mother about Hideki. Ako's mother then asked if there was a problem, even referring to Hideki as her daughter's future husband. Hideki apologized and explained that he had come to visit Ako that day and had even skipped school. Ako's mother was surprised that Hideki came just to visit, even though Ako had said she wouldn't go to school. She then smiled at him and said she had to leave for work immediately. Before leaving, she asked if Hideki wanted to see Ako. According to her, after she was gone, Hideki would be the one responsible for taking care of her daughter. Hideki admitted that he wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility. However, Ako's mother really liked Hideki because she thought he was kind and honest. She then handed him the key to Ako's room. Hideki immediately went to Ako's room and knocked on her door. Hearing Hideki's voice, Ako was shocked and couldn't believe that he had actually come to her house. Hideki said that it was a sudden visit, like he had come to see her and asked her to let him in. Ako was confused about what Hideki was doing there and asked where her mother was. Hideki explained that he had received permission from Ako's mother and that she had even given him the key to her room. Ako was frustrated with her mother. Hideki then said that Ako's mother had entrusted her future to him. Hideki said that he was coming in and wouldn't take no for an answer. Without hesitation, he immediately opened Ako's bedroom door. He was shocked to see Ako wearing nothing but her underwear. Hideki quickly shut the door again. Ako, equally startled, explained that she felt too hot in her room and Hideki had scared her. She then told him to wait a moment while she got ready and invited him in. However, when Hideki opened the door again, he saw Ako completely undressed. Once again, he slammed the door shut and demanded to know why she had taken off all her clothes after saying she was ready. Ako replied that she had mentally prepared herself. Frustrated, Hideki told her to hurry up and put on some clothes. Once she was dressed, Ako welcomed Hideki inside. Hideki was surprised to see a refrigerator in her room. Ako explained that she always stocked up for a whole week so she wouldn't have to leave her room. Curious, Hideki asked how she managed to use the bathroom if she didn't leave for an entire week. Ako casually answered that she used bottles to relieve herself. Hideki, who was in the middle of drinking, suddenly had a horrifying thought: was the liquid in his glass not tea? Ako quickly reassured him that she was just joking. Ako then asked why Hideki had come to her house. Was he trying to convince her to go back to school? But to her surprise, Hideki said he actually wanted to have fun with her. Hideki explained that a healer needs to manage the cooldown time of their healing abilities properly, use skills at the right moment for consecutive attacks, maintain buffs, and cancel enemy techniques. Additionally, large-scale healing should be used if things go wrong. That was the ideal way to play. Unfortunately, Ako didn't understand any of it. She was completely lost. Hideki reminded her that she wanted to reach max level and reincarnate in the game. If that was truly her goal, she needed to do these things. Determined, Hideki decided to start teaching her. Ako, however, felt like his training was too harsh. Hideki reassured her that there was no need to worry because he would always be there until she got the hang of it. Hideki began training Ako by guiding her through preparing healing spells, managing tempo by monitoring cooldowns, and combining skills effectively. While they were playing, Schwein and Apricot suddenly logged into the game. Hideki logged in as well using the laptop Kyo had lent him. Rusian and Ako met up with the others at their usual gathering spot. Schwein immediately questioned them about skipping school. Rusian casually replied that he and Ako had just been playing together. Ako, feeling nervous, hid behind Rusian. Schwein and Apricot were visibly annoyed after hearing that. Makohime remarked that if Schwein and Apricot knew they had skipped school just to have fun, they would definitely visit Ako's house. Out of nowhere, Rusian suddenly announced to Nekohime that he was quitting school. Schwein and Apricot were completely shocked. Rusian declared that if Ako was dropping out, then he would too. He also explained that balancing school life with his otaku lifestyle was tough, and he preferred to just relax and play games instead. Nekohime thought Rusian was just too stressed out, but then she remembered that he had said he would handle things in his own way. So in the end, she decided to support his choice. Hearing that, Ako immediately begged Hideki not to go through with it. But Hideki reasoned that if it was okay for Ako, then it should be okay for him too. Ako protested, saying that if Hideki dropped out, he would never see Kyo and Akane in real life again. Hideki then asked her if that was really what she wanted. Meanwhile, Akane mentioned to Kyo that Hideki and Ako weren't saying anything in the game, even though it didn't look like they had logged out of the chat. Ms. Yui speculated that they were probably busy. She believed that Hideki had taken Ako that far without asking for anyone's help, so all they could do now was wait and trust him to bring Ako back to school. At that moment, Hideki asked Ako if she truly had no desire to return to school. Ako admitted that making friends was hard for her, and she didn't feel comfortable in class. The situation was just too difficult, but at the same time, she didn't know what else to do because for her, the only thing she enjoyed was the club activities. According to Hideki, everything about Nanako was on Ako's mind, making her feel confused. Ako then asked how Hideki knew that, and Hideki replied that maybe it was because he was her husband. Hideki asked Ako if she had fun that day. Ako said she was really happy. Hearing that made Hideki happy as well, and he asked if they should just quit school and do this every day. Hideki admitted that he used to think just having the game was enough. But ever since Ako came along, he realized that real life could be fun too. He also mentioned that even Akane wanted to be with them forever. Unfortunately for Ako, real life was just too difficult. Hideki reassured her, saying that it was okay. If she ever felt exhausted from real life, he would play with her as much as she wanted and help her find the joy she was looking for. And when she felt strong enough, she could come back to school. If they couldn't play together, he would always be waiting for her at school. Ako then asked if Hideki would stay at home with her if she kept trying but ended up feeling tired. Hideki agreed, saying that he would do that for his wife. Hearing that, Ako was willing to give it a try. The next day, Ako returned to class. Her classmates immediately asked why she had skipped school the day before, expressing concern about whether she had been sick. Nanako then told their classmates that Ako had a boyfriend in their class, and when he found out that Ako was at home, he went to visit her to check on her. Ako's classmates were shocked to hear that Ako had such a caring boyfriend. Ako simply smiled and said that her boyfriend was the best. Rusien told Ako about what happened after he was rejected by Neko Hime. At that time, Yuyun, Rusien's friend, was crying and telling him that his in-game wife, Sarah, had married someone else using a different account. To him, that was the same as cheating. Rusien said that everyone acts differently when they get married in a game. He thought that maybe Sarah just wanted the marriage bonuses. Yoon was deeply in love with Sarah, so he decided to divorce her. To Yuyun, it wasn't fair for him to be the only one suffering. So he immediately asked Neko Hime why she had rejected Rusien's proposal. It turned out there were 3 reasons. First, Neko Hime wasn't interested in getting married in the game. Second, Rusien wasn't the only one who had approached her. And third, the game didn't allow male characters to marry other male characters. Rusien was confused about why he even wanted to get married in the game in the first place. Yuyun, still fired up, declared that marriage was just nonsense and swore never to get married again. Rusien also said he wouldn't get married either. However, after divorcing both of his in-game wives, Yuyun ended up getting married a 3rd time. That was the story Rusien told Ako. Ako immediately responded by saying that she would never divorce Rusien. Rusien said the real lesson from that experience was learning how people behave in a marriage. Ako then said she loved Rusien very much. Rusien blushed and asked if that feeling was only in the game. Embarrassed, he quickly said he was going to sleep and logged out of the game. That night, Ako's words stayed on Hideki's mind. The next morning, Miss Yu was teaching Hideki's class, and they were taking turns reading aloud. After So finished his part, Miss Yui called on Hideki to continue, but she accidentally called him Rusien instead. The entire class burst into laughter. During the break, 2 of Ako's classmates were asking her opinion about outfit designs from a fashion magazine. But Ako had no idea how to respond. In the end, Nanako stepped in and said both outfits looked good. Hideki walked over to Ako, and she immediately jumped and hugged him, saying it was cruel and terrifying. Later in the club room, Ako explained that the models in the magazine looked like they were smugly smiling as if they were powerful high school fashion queens. She couldn't understand how people enjoyed reading those kinds of magazines. Akane told Ako to stop insulting the magazine. Hideki was surprised to find out the magazine belonged to Akane. Akane then explained that this magazine was basically like a Wikipedia for high school girls in real life. Reading it would teach Ako the basics of skincare, makeup, brand names, celebrities she should know about, and everything else she needed to live as a proper high school girl. Ako admitted that if Akane had to spell it out like that, then it must be something important. Akane added that it was just like playing an online game. If you read the guidebook first, it would be much more helpful. But Ako preferred to just jump in and play without any guides. Akane said that playing blindly was outdated. The real world was now all about teamwork, and in the endgame, parties only recruited experienced players. Ako hated endgame content. Akane told her to just accept it. There was no choice but to live in the real world. Hideki asked Akane to stop being so harsh. Kyo entered the club room, apologizing for being late. She was surprised to see everyone looking down and asked what happened, but they all said it was nothing. Kyo laughed and said she completely understood how Ako felt. Akane then said she would talk to Nanako and ask her to be more considerate. Hideki suggested that they help Set complete a quest that day. Ako hesitated, asking if she really had to be with Set in the game. Akane reassured her that Aiko's level in Lei was much higher than Set's, so she had nothing to worry about. They played Lei together to complete a quest. Schwein easily defeated the wolf monster. It was no challenge for her. According to Apricot, it was just a beginner's job selection quest, so the enemy wasn't anything special to them. Hideki then told Set to go to the glowing object. When Set touched it, she received the power of the sacred beast and her appearance automatically changed. Schwein congratulated her on becoming a summoner, and all she had to do was choose her pet using her summoning skill. Without hesitation, Set picked a cute dog and named it Mouton. Schwein commented, "Isn't Mouton the name of your dog at home?" They gathered at their usual spot. Apricot praised Set's choice of the summoner job. Schwein mentioned that fighting by letting a pet attack the enemy from the front while she attacked from behind in super style. Set laughed, noting how drastically Schwein's in-game speech differed from Akane's way of talking at school. Schwein told her that she'd get used to it over time. She then asked if Set had checked the guide page that had been given to her. Set had read it, but she still didn't understand it. Whenever she had questions, she just asked Rusian. Akane was annoyed because things had gone so terribly. Set had triggered a trap and blown them all up, then charged straight at the boss, leading to the entire party getting wiped out. Schwein told Ako to take note, saying, "This is just like real life. This is what happens when you don't know what you're doing." Ako nodded, realizing she didn't want to end up like that. Set then asked why everyone seemed so relaxed when final exams were coming up soon. With that, Kyo decided to suspend club activities until the exams were over. The club room would be closed until the exams were finished, and she told everyone to study properly. Akane was surprised at how calm and composed Kyo seemed, but it turned out Kyo had always been a top student. Kyo also reminded them that once the exams were over, a long summer vacation awaited them. Akane and Hideki were curious if they would have any events during summer break, but Kyo simply said that they would definitely look forward to it. Ako then asked if she could still log into the game from home during exam season. Kyo left that decision up to each person, saying they would need something to help them relax after studying anyway. That afternoon, Hideki and Ako walked home together. Ako mentioned that with club activities suspended, their consecutive lunches would be interrupted, meaning she wouldn't have to go to school anymore. Hideki insisted that she still needed to come since her attendance was already at the limit. It turned out Ako had only been coming to school because of the club. Hideki warned her that if she failed her exams, the club would be disbanded, so she had to try her best. Ako started thinking she was going to school for the club, but the club was created for school. It felt like an endless cycle. Hideki encouraged her to do her best, but Ako jokingly asked him to keep pushing her all the way home. Ako then mentioned that summer was coming soon, but Hideki reminded her that they had final exams first. He asked if she was ready, but Ako simply said that her dream was to become a housewife. Hideki then asked how her midterm exams had gone and guessed that she had probably failed all of them. Later at home, Hideki worried that if Ako had to take remedial lessons, he wouldn't be able to confess his feelings to her. Suddenly, his younger sister Mizuki asked what he was thinking about. Mizuki asked him to help her study, and that gave Hideki an idea he could teach Ako too. Without hesitation, Hideki left Mizuki behind and rushed out. In the game, Rusian told his friends that he had decided to tutor Ako, thinking it would be an effective method. Ako was then forced to study in the game, with Rusian teaching her some of the material for the finals. At that moment, he was helping her with Japanese, making sure she could write properly using kanji. Ako was getting sick of Japanese class, even the kanji characters in her head were starting to dance around. Next, Schwein was going to teach her math. For Ako, math was a nightmare, so she tried to run away, but Apricot blocked her with an ice wall. Ako felt like the game she was playing was cruel and bizarre. She was being forced to study like crazy inside a game. Schwein told her to stop complaining since they were all there to support her. No matter what, they had to make sure Ako passed. Ako said she didn't care about the first semester. If she failed, she could just take remedial classes during summer break. But that Nekohime informed her that the teachers were busy with entrance exams for new students, so they wouldn't have time to hold remedial classes for first years. Nekohime advised Ako to focus on Japanese if she didn't like math. Hearing Nekohime say that, Ako felt like she was back in remedial class with Ms. Yui. Nekohime reminded her that in the game, she wasn't a teacher, she was Nekohime. Set asked Rusian if Nekohime was really a teacher in real life, but Rusian told her not to ask and just focus on listening to the explanation. Ako admitted that when she saw difficult sentences, her head started spinning. Nekohime emphasized that essays were really important. The next day, the modern Japanese final exam began. The students started working on their test papers and Eiko's face was full of anxiety. After the final exams ended, Hideki and his friends played their online game. Ako looked completely exhausted and restless. Schwein told her to hang in there. Nekohime revealed that she had checked Ako's answer sheet, and surprisingly, Ako had passed. She didn't need remedial classes or extra lessons, all thanks to everyone's efforts. Rusien praised Ako, and she excitedly invited everyone to go leveling up together. But Rusien stopped her, pointing out that she still looked dizzy and needed to log out and get some sleep. Apricot reminded her that just because exams were over, it didn't mean she could start skipping school. Ako left first and went straight to bed. Nekohime also logged out because she had reports to prepare. Apricot and Schwam were about to log out too, but Rusien stopped them, asking for advice. He told them that he wanted to confess his love to Ako and asked what they thought. Seeing that both of them were completely silent, he repeated himself. Apricot admitted that they were just unsure of how to respond since he had brought it up so suddenly. Rusien explained that summer break was coming up and they wouldn't see each other outside of the game, so he wanted to create some special memories of his youth during the summer. Unfortunately, neither Apricot nor Schween gave him any real advice. They just told him they supported him but didn't want to get involved. Frustrated, Rusien asked why they were being so heartless and what would happen to him if he got rejected. Schwein bluntly told him that if he was that worried about rejection, then maybe he shouldn't confess at all. Apricot, however, reassured him that judging by the situation, she didn't think Ako would reject him. Schwein then asked why he didn't just call her right now and confess over the phone, saying that Ako definitely wouldn't turn him down. But Rusien wanted to do it in person rather than over the phone. Plus, he had never confessed to a girl before. Curious, Rusien asked Apricot about her own romantic experiences, but she admitted she had never had a boyfriend. He then turned to Schwein, knowing that she had been confessed to before, but Schwein revealed that she had turned the guy down. She said that if Rusien needed advice on how to reject someone, she could help, but otherwise, none of them had any experience in love. Schwein then suggested that they should all put their heads together and figure out the best way to confess in a way that would make any girl happy to hear it. That day was the last day of school before summer vacation. As the student council president, Kyo gave a speech to the students marking the end of the school term. She expressed her hope that during summer break, all the students would continue to take pride in being students of Megasaki High School. In front of the class, Ms. Yui wished that summer vacation would be meaningful for everyone. As Hideki was chatting with his friends, Ako suddenly called out to him and invited him to the last club meeting before break. So teased Ako, saying that he would be lonely without being able to admire her beauty for an entire month. Surprisingly, Ako's response was quite blunt. While in the club room, Hyo announced that there would be no club activities during the summer break. However, the Alley Cat Guild would continue as usual. Hyo hoped that all the members would enjoy their time playing online games. She then announced that the online gaming club would be holding a camping trip that week. Hyo reminded them that what online gamers needed most was money to buy premium items, but more importantly, they needed to take care of their health. The camp would be held outdoors, so she asked everyone to prepare themselves accordingly. Miss Yui also agreed to accompany them. Ako then told Hideki that according to the schedule, they would be going to the beach, so they would need swimsuits. On the way home, Hideki recalled Akane and Kyo's advice about confessing to Ako. Ako suddenly asked Hideki which swimsuit he liked best, specifically the school swimsuit. Ako believed that if she wore a school swimsuit, all the guys would go wild. Hideki quickly dismissed her assumption, telling her not to think that way because he preferred something more normal. Hideki then invited Ako to stop by the park for a moment. As they sat on a bench, Hideki turned his back to Ako, feeling nervous. He was secretly reading a piece of paper that Akane and Kyo had given him. The note from Kyo simply said, "Go all in." Meanwhile, the note from Akane advised him to set the mood, confess, and succeed. Hideki was taken aback by their straightforward advice. He then asked Ako how he should create a good atmosphere. But Ako simply replied that they were always in a good atmosphere since they were a couple. Summoning all his courage, Hideki finally asked Ako if she would officially be his girlfriend. However, Ako flatly refused. That day was the camping trip for the online gaming club members. Hideki still looked sleepy because he had stayed up late playing games the night before. He was surprised at how fresh Ms. Yui looked even though it wasn't even 6 in the morning yet. Ms. Yui explained that back in college, she was part of a wrestling club, so she was used to early morning training sessions. Before long, Akane and Ako arrived. Ako looked just as sleepy. Hideki greeted Ako, and she greeted him back, but shortly after, she suddenly collapsed into his arms, choking him. When he looked up, Hideki noticed Akane giving him a sharp glare. He was about to ask about it, but Akane told him not to worry, saying she was just tired. Once all the members had arrived, Kyo announced that the Modern Communication Through Gaming Club's summer camp would officially begin. The purpose of the camp was to strengthen the members' gaming skills, but there was one major rule: no internet connection for the entire day. This event was called One Day Without the Internet Camp. Upon hearing this, Ako immediately perked up in shock. During the trip, both Ako and Akane dozed off, with Ako resting her head on Hideki's shoulder. Meanwhile, Hideki kept thinking about the rule prohibiting internet access. Earlier, Akane had questioned Kyo about it, wondering if it was meant to make Ako realize that her in-game marriage status was different from real life. Kyo clarified that it wasn't the case. According to her, Ako had immersed herself in online gaming because she was exhausted from a life that didn't align with her. Rusien agreed with Kyo's statement. Kyo believed that if they flipped the situation, Ako would naturally want to return to a life where everything made sense to her. Akane agreed with the idea. Kyo further explained that by doing this, Ako could spend her summer vacation with all of them, enjoying her youth as a regular student, which included experiencing a proper love confession in the perfect setting. Kyo was confident that everything would go smoothly. Hideki then asked what exactly counted as a proper love confession in a perfect setting, perhaps while watching the sunset or gazing at the stars. Kyo told him that since they were going camping, all those elements would be present and the rest was up to him. Hideki realized that he needed to confess his feelings like a normal high schooler and get a normal response from her. He was suddenly taken aback when he noticed Ako drooling in her sleep. The journey was long and exhausting. When they finally arrived at the location, they were amazed by how grand the lodge was. Ms. Yui even asked how much it cost to rent the place. Hideki quickly told her not to ask students about rental prices. Ako commented that the lodge looked more like a hotel. Akane then asked Kyo what they would do after putting down their luggage, whether they would clean up or prepare the futons. Kyo replied that the staff would take care of that, and they would be arriving shortly. Hideki sighed in relief, but Ms. Yui pointed out that this wasn't how a real camping trip should be. She questioned whether cleaning up and preparing futons weren't supposed to be part of the experience. Hideki turned his gaze toward the beach. He could hardly believe it was a private beach. Not long after, Ako called out to Hideki and ran toward him. He turned around only to be surprised by Ako wearing a swimsuit. She apologized for making him wait so long. As Hideki stared at her, Ako started feeling a bit self-conscious. Hideki quickly apologized and asked where the others were. Ako told him they were still changing. She said she had come to him first because she thought he might feel lonely being by himself on the beach. Hideki continued to look at Ako, making her feel embarrassed. He reassured her that she didn't need to be so shy. Ako admitted that when she picked out the swimsuit, she thought it looked great, but now that she was actually wearing it, she couldn't help but feel flustered. Hideki told Ako that she was really cute and encouraged her to be proud of herself. Ako smiled at his words and thanked him. They gazed at each other, but suddenly, Akane shouted at having suspected that Ako would come to the beach first. Kyo's original plan was for all of them to appear at the same time in their swimsuits to make Hideki nosebleed and run to the restroom, but their plan failed. Hideki, however, said that he wouldn't react like that. Akane then told Ako to put on sunscreen, warning her that she would get sunburned if she didn't. Akane applied sunscreen on Ako, making Ako giggle because it tickled. Kyo then pointed out that Hideki hadn't applied any either and jokingly offered to put it on for him, but Hideki refused. Akane and Ako volunteered to help Kyo, and the three of them applied sunscreen all over Hideki's body, making him squirm from the ticklish sensation. Hideki felt like he had been violated by the three of them. Ms. Yui then arrived and invited everyone to get ready to play in the water. Hideki and Ako lay on floaties, Akane dove underwater, and Kyo swam. After having their fill, they returned to shore. Ms. Yui was surprised by how satisfied they looked even though it was still early in the day. She was also confused about why they weren't playing together. The group didn't understand what she meant. Hideki explained with an analogy. When a new map appears in an online game, they all enter it together, but once inside, they split up. The most important thing in a new map is to find out how much EXP can be earned for leveling up, whether there are rare items, and how high the death rate is. After exploring, they regroup and share the information they gathered. They do things individually at first, but always return to each other in the end. That was their pattern. Ms. Yu was surprised and asked if that was normal for their generation. Hideki wasn't sure, but for him and his friends, it was just the way things were. After saying that, Hideki started craving an online game session, but Kyo reminded him that the inn's internet access was restricted. Akane mentioned that she had enjoyed playing in the ocean and Ako was already eager to sleep in the lodge. Ms. Yuvi reminded them that they were still at the beach. She wondered why they weren't playing together and experiencing the youthful excitement of the moment. Ako admitted that she didn't enjoy things like that at all. Ms. Yuvi didn't care whether they liked it or not, whether they gave up, or whether they went anywhere at all. She insisted that they try and give it their best shot. Hideki countered, saying that if they tried a new game and didn't like it, it would simply stop playing it. Ms. Yu became frustrated and argued that the real world and the gaming world were completely different. She then firmly ordered them to do it as their club advisor. After that, they played beach volleyball together. Kyo's powerful smash sent Hideki falling into the sand, making Kyo and Akane burst into laughter. Once they had enough of volleyball, they moved on to the watermelon smashing game. Hideki was blindfolded and tasked with breaking the watermelon while the others guided him. To his surprise, he succeeded. Then they buried Akane in the sand and shaped her body to resemble a game character, laughing and having fun together. Time flew by as they enjoyed themselves until sunset. While Hideki was soaking in the hot spring, he suddenly realized that he needed to cherish his youth and confess his feelings to Ako. Just then, Ako opened the door to the hot spring and asked Hideki to join her for a soak. Hideki, completely naked, was shocked and instinctively stood up. Akane immediately pulled Ako away and quickly shut the door. Hideki couldn't believe that Ako had just seen him naked. That night, Kyo invited everyone to have a barbecue. Ako asked why the ingredients hadn't been prepared yet. She volunteered to handle it, and Akane also wanted to help, but Ako said there wasn't enough time. Akane felt insulted and thought Ako saw her as a nuisance. In the end, Ako cooked everything herself while the others just enjoyed the food to their heart's content. Hideki and Ako sat together, gazing at the beach. Hideki told Ako that he hadn't expected her to be such a good cook. Suddenly, Akane ran past them, swinging a sparkler like a sword. Hideki assumed she was practicing sword play, but Ako figured she was just waving it around. Hideki thought it was dangerous, but instead, Ms. Yui spun Akane around playfully. Hideki and Ako laughed at the sight. After that, Kyo lit the fireworks she had prepared for Hideki and Ako. They watched the fireworks display together. Not long after, Ako started to tear up. Hideki asked what was wrong. Ako said she didn't mean to cry, but for some reason, she felt extremely happy. She had never imagined herself spending time like that. She was so happy that it almost felt unreal, yet she also felt a bit sad. Ako thanked Hideki. Hideki was confused as to why she was thanking him, and Ako explained that if it weren't for him, she wouldn't have been there at all. Hideki replied that it was the same for him. If it weren't for Ako, he wouldn't be here either. Ako said that meant they were both lucky. Hideki then told Ako that he liked her. Ako responded that she liked him too. She then asked if that meant they were a perfect husband and wife pair. That night, Hideki told Kyo and Akane that his efforts didn't seem to have worked. Kyo was surprised since she had cut off the internet connection to make sure they would have a summer like normal people, yet Ako still believed that she and Hideki were married in real life. Hideki also realized that a married couple was a level above just dating, so no matter what he did, Ako wouldn't budge. Akane and Kyo concluded that their plan had failed. Suddenly, Ms. Yui arrived and told everyone to go to sleep since it was getting late. The next morning, after everyone had finished packing, Kyo told them to get ready to leave. Hideki asked if that meant they were heading to another location. Kyo explained that they were going to an even better place. She was taking them to Hotel Fours. She announced that the real summer camp for the Modern Communication Club through online games was about to begin. The hotel was filled with decorations based on the game Legendary Age. It turned out the hotel was collaborating with the game. Akane was sure that someone was about to lose over their last collectible. And just as she said that, Ako screamed in excitement upon spotting a giant Pouring King plush. She immediately ran over and hugged it. Hideki asked Akane if she wasn't interested in hugging it too. Akane replied that she wasn't. Ms. Yui had already checked in and handed out rune keys to everyone. Each key had a token attached, which would be used for the event. Kyo explained that since they had been without internet all day, their urge to play online games had built up more than usual. By inserting the token, they would enter the event. Excited, they quickly sat down in front of computers and inserted their tokens. Hideki tried to block Ako from peeking at his screen as he logged in. Suddenly, Hideki found himself unable to log in. It turned out he had mistyped his password because Ako had been distracting him the whole time. Once they successfully logged in, they realized that the in-game setting was identical to the hotel. The event map was exclusive to those participating in the event. Hideki read the game description and saw that there was a bonus set for participants, starting with a trip to the Hotel Flora's restaurant on the first floor. They headed to the restaurant where Ako noticed there were a ton of items listed on the menu. Apparently, that meant they would receive in-game items based on the food they ordered. Hideki suddenly blurted out that it was cruel. He wanted an item that could boost his strength. After eating, they had to enter the code on their cards to claim their items. The card also mentioned that the same bonus items were waiting for them at the souvenir shop on the first floor. They stopped by the souvenir shop and picked up some things. Hideki was confused about why Akane was buying so many ginger cookies. Akane explained that the in-game item linked to them was exactly what she wanted. According to Ms. Yui, letting students participate in the event made it feel a bit overwhelming for adults. Kyo then suggested they head to their rooms since they were carrying a lot of stuff, and besides, they hadn't even been to their rooms since checking in. Kyo explained that the rooms being used for this promotional event were equipped with computers and internet access. That meant they could immediately use the in-game items they had just received. Once they got to their rooms, they all logged into the game right away. Rusian and Ako ran into each other in the hallway. Ako mentioned that Shuoin and Apricot were busy testing out the new items they had just obtained. Rusian then invited Ako to try out their items as well, just like the others. Blushing, Ako shyly suggested that Rusian come to her room instead. When Rusian arrived at Ako's room, the atmosphere suddenly became awkward. Ako hesitated for a moment before saying that she had been waiting for a moment like this for a long time. Rusian disappeared from the game screen and then reappeared, asking what exactly Ako wanted. As it turned out, Ako just wanted to have a romantic chat with him. Hearing that, Rusian couldn't help but grin. At that moment, Rusian and Ako were alone together inside the hotel in the online game. Meanwhile, as Hideki was playing, his account suddenly logged out on its own. He tried to log back in, but before he could finish typing his password, he accidentally spilled his drink. He quickly grabbed a towel to wipe it up. After that, he returned to his keyboard and re-entered his password to log in again, but the system said his password was incorrect. He tried multiple times, but he still couldn't access his Lei account. Hideki suddenly remembered a conversation between Kyo and Akane about how, lately, several online games, including Lei, had been experiencing account hacks. That meant the Rusian in the game at that moment wasn't actually him. Panic set in and Hideki rushed to Ako's hotel room. He knocked frantically on the door, shouting that the person inside his Rusian wasn't really him. Ako opened the door with teary eyes and immediately hugged Hideki. Hideki apologized for shocking her. He then entered Ako's room and asked to check her chat history. At that moment, Rusian paused for a second and then asked Ako what they had been talking about earlier. Ako explained that they had been alone in her room and she had wanted to have a sweet and affectionate chat with him. The hacked Rusian suddenly realized that they were already married. Ako was confused as to why Rusian was only saying that now after they had been married for so long. She even reminded him about the day they held their wedding in the church, and just thinking about that day made her feel excited. Rusian then asked Ako if she was mentally and physically prepared, suggesting they should go ahead and be intimate just as she wanted. He immediately pulled Ako into his arms, making her feel a bit uneasy since he wasn't usually this assertive. Rusian then asked if Ako didn't like it, staring at her with a burning gaze that made Ako start to doubt he was really the Rusian she knew. Rusian then said that before they got affectionate, he wanted Ako to send him a picture first because something a little risque could be useful. He even said he wasn't interested in Ako's appearance and made insulting remarks about how gamers were all weak and pathetic losers. Ako shouted, telling him not to say such things while wearing Rusian's face. The fake Rusian stood up and insisted that he was Rusian. Ako started crying, saying that the Rusian she loved would never say things like that. After checking the chat history, Hideki saw what happened. Ako apologized to him, but Hideki was confused about why she was saying sorry when she hadn't done anything wrong. He told her that while this was something that shouldn't have happened, it was always a possibility in an online game. He pointed out that Ako was also a victim, having been pressured by the inappropriate messages from those jerks looking for a romantic partner. Hideki assured Ako that she wasn't at fault. If anyone was to blame, it was him for being careless and letting this happen to her. Ako apologized again, but Hideki firmly told her it wasn't her fault. Ako admitted that she had called out to the person she thought was Rusian, even if just for a moment. Hideki then quickly reported the situation to the others. Kyo was shocked. Even though she had been cautious, it turned out that someone really did get hacked. Akane agreed that this was a serious problem. Kyo explained that when using a shared PC, they should all be more careful. She then apologized to Hideki, saying this was all her fault, but Hideki reassured her that it wasn't. Ms. Yui suggested contacting the hotel staff to report what had happened. Hideki mentioned that he had already reset his password and recovered his account. Kyo then asked if he knew how his password was stolen. Hideki suspected it happened when he logged in from the lobby PC. Kyo realized that the first time his password didn't work, it wasn't because of a typo. Akane didn't understand what that meant, so Hideki explained that the login page he accessed on the lobby PC was actually a fake login page designed to look like the real one. When he tried to log in, the page stole his ID and password before redirecting him to the real login page. Ms. Yui called it a classic scam. To show just how bad the hacker was, Hideki checked on his character and discovered that Rusian had been deleted. Hearing that, Ako's heart sank. Hideki calmed Ako down and told her that it didn't mean he had disappeared too. Ako said that Rusian was gone. Hideki assured her that he was Rusian, and while there was nothing he could do after his account was deleted, he could still create a new character. More importantly, he needed to retrieve the items that he wouldn't be able to obtain again. Hideki suspected that the hacker was aware of what he was doing, and as he tried to recover his items, some of them disappeared. Akane was surprised at how quickly the hacker acted. Hideki explained that he and the hacker were in a race against each other. Most likely, the hacker was selling his items, so Hideki was planning to buy back as many as he could. Akane was confused as to why Hideki would willingly give his money to the hacker. Hideki admitted that it was frustrating, but at the very least, he wanted to reclaim the items he had collected. Akane offered to check the shops and marketplaces, while Ms. Yui said she would gather people to help. Kyo then instructed everyone to return to the PCs in their rooms and immediately start searching for the stolen items. Ako asked Hideki what he was going to do, and he told her he was going to meet a friend who was well connected to consult with them about the situation. Rusian met with the Black Mage in the guild and told him about the hacker who had erased all of his equipment and deleted his character. He said it was terrifying. Rusian explained that he was using a backup character he had made before named Firashiki, but he preferred to be called Rusian since he was used to it. The Black Mage criticized Rusian for being careless, saying that people should protect themselves. He firmly believed that self-defense was fundamental in online games. Rusian admitted that he understood, and although it might be impolite to ask, he wanted the Black Mage's help in finding his stolen items. The Black Mage agreed. Rusian was surprised, but the Black Mage reminded him that they were both gamers. If a fellow player was in trouble, it was only natural to help. That was what it meant to be an online gamer. Meanwhile, Nekohime asked Claude to help her search for Rusian's stolen items. Claude ordered the entire elite guard force of Nekohime to carry out her request. The members of Nekohime's guard were enthusiastic, shouting Nekohime's name in unison. Nekohime was happy that they were all willing to help her. Apricot and Rusian went to several shops to check the items being sold. They found some of Rusian's stolen gear being sold there under the seller named Roundton. Rusian was certain that Roundton was the hacker who had stolen his account. Apricot took screenshots of the listings to send to the admin as evidence. Rusian said he had already taken pictures, but the hacker was selling the items at ridiculously high prices. Apricot offered to buy everything back for Rusian. Rusian told her she didn't have to go that far. However, Apricot insisted, saying that doing so would ease her own guilt. Hideki played the online game with Ako, and she informed him that a message had arrived. It was from Claude, a member of Nekohime's guard. He had found the ring that Ako had given to Rusian. Apparently, Claude obtained it after defeating a monster. It seemed that the ring had been discarded because it couldn't be sold, and a monster had picked it up. Hideki called it a small stroke of luck, while Ako said it was the power of their love at work. The next day at school, Ms. Yui told Hideki not to let the incident weigh too heavily on him. Kyo commented that the school felt really empty during summer vacation. Hideki thanked Kyo for staying with him and helping explain what had happened at school. Kyo said it was only natural for her, as the student council president, to be by his side. Hideki was still furious about the hacking incident and had shaken him. But even worse than losing his items and having his character deleted was the fact that the hacker had spoken to Ako while pretending to be Rusian. The hacker had stolen Rusian's identity, and in just a moment, had also stolen Ako from him. Kyo mentioned that one of the problems with the internet is that you can never really know who you are talking to. Once an account is taken over, it is easy to pretend to be someone else, and that is exactly what happens in online games. Hideki couldn't believe how fragile and unprotected their connections were. Kyo pointed out that Ako immediately knew that Rusian was someone else just from their chat. How deep was Hideki's relationship if someone's identity could be determined from just a short conversation? That, in Kyo's opinion, showed just how strong the bond between Hideki and Ako was. Although Hideki was feeling better, he still wanted to beat that hacker to a pulp. In the online game, Rusian told his friend that the admin did not respond to his report, even though he had evidence of the stolen items being sold. Schwein was furious when she heard that. Rusian explained that the hacker's IP was different from Rounton's, the person selling the stolen goods. An IP address is like a number assigned to anyone connected to the internet. If someone commits a crime, it can be used to track and identify them. According to Apricot, as long as they couldn't definitively identify the hacker as the same person, they couldn't accuse anyone outright. Rusian figured that the hacker played the game from home, but when hacking or doing something shady, he would definitely use a different IP. Suddenly, the Black Mage arrived with bad news. He sent them a link and asked them to check it out. The link led to a scam blog called LOLN. The blog was run by a well-known scammer who frequently committed fraud in various games. This scammer even joked about the exact time he hacked the account. Furious, Schwein started cursing, and Rusian warned her not to use foul language. But then the Black Mage also started swearing. Kyo commented that hackers love to brag about their crimes and openly admit what they do. There were a lot of people like that on the internet. The Black Mage suspected that the hacker was trying to do RMT. That meant the hacker was being extra cautious to avoid getting caught. RMT, or real money trading, is the act of exchanging in-game currency or items for real-world money. In Lei, that was strictly against the rules. Rusian suddenly had an idea. He wasn't sure if it would work, but at the very least, it might help them catch the hacker. Hideki asked Akane and Kyo to help him, and they worked on the plan for 3 days straight, pulling all-nighters. Then suddenly, Hideki's doorbell rang. When he opened the door, it was Ako. Without thinking, he immediately shut the door again. Ako was confused and asked why Hideki was treating her like that. Hideki replied that it wasn't on purpose. Ako said that since she had come all the way from home, Hideki should at least welcome his wife warmly. Hideki responded that Ako was no longer his wife because Rusian was gone and their in-game marriage had been annulled. Shocked, Ako asked if that meant they were divorced. She understood that Hideki was devastated about losing Rusian, but she never thought that meant they were no longer husband and wife. Ako was furious at the hacker, but she knew it was too late to be angry now. Ako then asked Hideki what their relationship was at that moment. Hideki answered that they were just friends. Ako asked if their relationship had changed. Would that mean the lunch she had prepared for him was unnecessary? She didn't know exactly what Hideki was up to, but she could see he was working really hard, so she wanted to make something for him. Hideki was touched and sincerely thanked Ako. He felt more motivated, and after eating the lunch she had prepared, he was ready to finish the final phase of his plan. Ako reminded Hideki not to push himself too hard because staying healthy was important. Hideki laughed and said that Ako sounded just like a wife. Meanwhile, the hacker was browsing a fake website, checking its history from the past few days. He noticed a trading board looking for people to do RMT in the game Legendary Lei. The numbers being offered there definitely caught his interest. The next day at school, Kyo and Hideki began their mission. In the online game, Hideki had already identified his target, Shoko. Rusian deliberately engaged in RMT with Shoko to attract the admin's attention quickly, and it only took about 30 seconds for the admin to respond. At that moment, Rusian and Shoko were summoned before the Game Master, Nayak. GM Nayak stated that they had been brought in because the admin had received information that both of them were involved in RMT. Just as Shoko was about to deny it, Rusian firmly admitted it. Rusian explained that Shoko had contacted him through the trading board site, and that it was true Shoko wanted to engage in RMT with him. That was when Shoko realized that Rusian had set her up. Rusian mentioned that it was the first time the school had trapped someone like this. Shoko then realized that Rusian was the person from before. When Rusian revealed his identity, Shoko was shocked. She then asked GM Nayak if there was any proof that they were actually conducting RMT since no money had been exchanged yet. According to her, the punishment should only be a 1-week account suspension. GM Nayak then revealed that Shoko was also suspected of hacking through the character Rounton. Shoko denied knowing Rounton, but GM Nayak explained that based on the IP address obtained from the trading board website, it was confirmed that Shoko had committed illegal access violations and would be fined. Shoko refused to be made the scapegoat and couldn't believe that such a shady website had managed to track her IP address and report it to the admins. Rusian stated that Shoko's assumption was exactly where she went wrong. He then revealed that the website in question had actually been created by him just 3 days ago. Shoko was confused because the site contained articles that appeared to be from a year ago. It turned out that Rusian had fabricated convincing-looking articles spanning several years into the past. Shoko was stunned when she realized that Rusian had faked the entire website just to trap her. She called him an idiot for wasting so much time just to catch one person. However, Rusien responded that he could never forgive Shoko for making his wife cry. Ako then understood that the reason Hideki and the others had stayed up all night was to create the fake website. Kyo explained that the website was designed to lure the hacker into responding to an exchange request from home without realizing it was a trap. The hacker then appeared as Shoko to conduct the transaction. Hideki pointed out that whenever the hacker did something dangerous, he carefully used a different IP address, especially when hacking Hideki's account. Because of this, the admins took the right step in locking Rusien's new account for 3 days as a penalty for attempting RMT. Hideki admitted that he was fully prepared to accept the harsher punishment. Finally, Rusien's original account was restored. Ako was overjoyed as this meant that her husband, Rusien, had returned. Everything ended happily, but there was still one final thing left. Rusien and Ako got married again in a church, attended by all their online gaming friends. Rusien told Ako that when his account was hacked, he was shocked because their relationship had been stolen by the hacker. He promised that he would never let that happen again and wanted to be even closer to Ako than ever before. He then asked Ako if she could love him not just as Rusien in the game, but also as the real him in the real world, even if it was just a little. Ako responded that there was no way she could love him just a little because she already loved him with all her heart. That day, Kyo invited Akane, Ako, and Nanako to her house. When they arrived in front of Kyo's house, they were amazed by the sheer size of the building. They were surprised that someone actually lived in such a massive house in real life. Ako even felt like she didn't belong in a house like that. And she also wondered why they had to come there in the first place. Akane explained that it was all because Ako hadn't done her homework at all. Ako then suggested that they call Hideki too. However, they wouldn't be allowed to stay over if they brought Guy, which frustrated Ako. If Hideki wasn't coming, then why did they bring Nanako along? Akane told her that this was a chance for Ako to practice talking to other people about Hideki, and Nanako could be a good practice partner for her. Ako was confused about how practicing with the main boss would be any good. Akane said that Ako needed to learn from death and summon a zombie attack. Nanako then asked Ako to be friends with her, but Ako got nervous and wished that Hideki would help her. When they entered Kyo's house, all the maids welcomed them. Kyo introduced her friends to the maids in her home. The maids were deeply moved because Kyo had finally made real friends. It was a moment they had been waiting for so long that they couldn't hold back their tears. Kyo told them to stop crying, and Ako said she was also touched, but Kyo didn't need their pity. Kyo then quickly led her friends to her room. A maid guided them through the hallway, and Ako was fascinated because it was her first time seeing a real-life maid. However, Kyo told her that these weren't real maids. The maid explained that as soon as they heard Kyo was bringing friends over, they all got ready for the occasion. Akane called it just ordinary cosplay. Kyo argued that these weren't just any maid uniforms. They were specially designed with careful attention to material design and practicality. The maid then offered to assist them with anything they needed. When they arrived at Kyo's room, they were amazed by how spacious it was. Akane even said it was 10 times bigger than her own room. Nanako opened another room within Kyo's bedroom, revealing a computer room equipped with a giant monitor. Akane joked, asking if Kyo was a day trader. Kyo quickly sat in her computer chair and demonstrated how she could earn 100 million in a single second. Akane said that was exactly what she had been dreaming of all this time. Kyo started explaining how it worked, but Akane covered her ears because she didn't want to hear it. Nanako then suggested they start working on her homework. After working on their assignments for a while, Ako started giving up. Akane was shocked at how Ako could forget everything she had learned in the first semester. Ako said that since she hadn't touched it for a month, her knowledge had started to wither and dry up. Then she asked where the bathroom was. Kyo told her that she had to go through the 5th door after exiting the room. Ako quickly rushed off to the bathroom, and suddenly, Nanako wanted to go too, but Ako refused to let her. Nanako was confused about why Ako wouldn't let her come along when she also needed to use the toilet. Akane then told Nanako to accompany Ako, because if they left her alone, she might run away. Ako insisted that she wouldn't, but Kyo and Akane didn't trust her. They ended up going to the toilet together, and after finishing, Ako asked if they could explore a little. Nanako followed her and asked if it was really okay for them to wander around without permission. Ako said that her adventurer's instincts were whispering to her, telling her that she needed to explore the map of this place. Nanako decided to go along with Ako because she was worried that Ako might actually run off if left alone. Ako said that there was no way she could run away. After waiting for a while, Kyo asked Akane if it was really okay to leave Ako and Nanako alone together. Akane replied that Schwein was a pig, so she wouldn't understand something that complicated. Kyo told Akane not to be like that because Ako and Nanako had very different personalities, but Akane thought that might actually help them get closer. Meanwhile, Ako and Nanako entered a room filled with books. To Ako, it looked like a place where hidden items could be found. Nanako pointed out that if something was hidden, then they weren't supposed to look for it, but Ako didn't care. She went straight into the room and said she saw a suspicious-looking book. Nanako reminded her that this wasn't a game, so nothing was going to happen. But when Ako pulled the book, the bookshelf moved, revealing a treasure chest behind it. Ako was thrilled that her hunch was right, while Nanako could hardly believe what she was seeing. Curious about what was inside, Ako immediately checked the treasure chest. When she opened it, she found the photo album. Suddenly, a maid approached them and took the album. She explained that it was the Goshoin family's treasure and Kyo's childhood memories were carefully preserved in it. Ako asked why it had to be hidden, and the maid replied that it was because Kyo found it embarrassing. The maid then added that since Ako and Nanako had discovered the album, they had to become members of the Princess Kyo worshippers. Hearing this, Ako and Nanako screamed and ran out of the room. Meanwhile, Kyo heard Ako and Nanako's screams. Akane suspected something had happened and remarked that if Hideki were there, he would know what to do. Kyo then asked if Akane relied on Hideki at times like this, even though she usually treated him like an insect. If Hideki heard that, he would definitely be shocked. Akane admitted that while she acted a little rough toward Hideki in class, she wasn't like that in the clubroom. She started wondering if she had actually been too harsh on Hideki, even though she never meant to be. Kyo reassured her, saying it was probably her fault and that Akane was actually a good person. Akane, however, didn't understand what Kyo meant. Then, Kyo heard Ako screaming for help again. Meanwhile, the maid was still chasing Ako and Nanako. Panicked, the two of them hid under a table. Without realizing it, Ako hugged Nanako but quickly let go. Nanako then asked if Ako really hated her that much. Ako replied that it was just her instincts that hadn't fully accepted Nanako yet. Nanako was shocked. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. After a moment, they came out of their hiding spot. Nanako earnestly told Ako that she really wanted to be friends. She then realized she had no idea where they were. In desperation, Ako shouted for Kyo, saying she didn't know where her room was. From the balcony, Akane and Kyo saw what was happening. Akane commented that it was their duty to help Ako since Hideki wasn't around. Kyo agreed, saying it was her responsibility as the guild master. The four of them later gathered in the backyard, where Nanako learned that the cat girl character in the game Legendary Age was actually their teacher, Yui. Ako was still upset about Nekohime deceiving Rusien back then. She even said that if she had met Rusien before Nekohime, she wouldn't have hesitated to eliminate her so that Rusien would fall for her instead. As Ako started acting out her imagined scenario of attacking Nekohime, Kyo grew a little concerned, remembering the time Ako had brought a magic staff into the real world. Nanako was curious about what kind of incident Ako was referring to. Ako said it was just one of her dark past moments. Akane concluded that Ako must have had many dark past moments. Ako proudly declared that no one could beat her when it came to having the most embarrassing past. Nanako then suggested making beautiful memories together, and Akane agreed. As the sun began to set, Akane asked about Ako's homework. It turned out that Ako hadn't done any of it. Akane said that from now on, she and the others wanted to see Ako do her homework. Ako pleaded with them to drop it since there was hardly any time left. Akane refused and Ako started crying out for Hideki. As the evening arrived, Hyo invited her friends for dinner. The maid served the food at the dining table. Nanako asked if it was okay for them to eat without Kyo's parents. Kyo explained that the family's chef actually looked forward to moments like these. Akane felt a little out of place, wondering how a household like Kyo's could have a personal chef. She admitted that she had never eaten such a luxurious meal before. Ako, being mischievous, decided to mess with Akane by suggesting they toast with the water in their bowls. When Ako revealed that the water was actually for washing hands, Akane was annoyed and wondered how Ako even knew about such customs. It turned out Ako had studied proper dining etiquette just in case Hideki ever invited her to a fancy restaurant. After dinner, Kyo invited them to take a bath together to prepare for their pajama party. They quickly headed to the hot spring bath. Akane was amazed by how spacious the bath was. Kyo explained that the bathing area had to be big to match the overall spaciousness of the house. Akane questioned why a bathroom needed to be balanced with the rest of the house. Ako seemed a little shy about entering the bath. She thought only those with great confidence could step into such a bath without hesitation. Kyo completely understood Ako's nervousness about bathing together. Nanako, however, pulled Ako out of the changing room so they could get into the bath. Ako muttered that she had promised herself that Hideki would be her first. Nanako had no idea what Ako meant by that. Akane chimed in, saying that she wanted Hideki to be her first bathing partner. But then she remembered that she had already taken the first position when they bathed together during the camping trip. Akane only just realized this. As they soaked in the bath, Akane reminded Akane not to wash someone else's hair with soap like she had done during the camping trip. Hearing this, Nanako expressed interest in going on a camping trip with them. However, Akane pointed out that Nanako wasn't a club member. Akane added that there was an invisible wall between Nanako and them. Suddenly, Akane became frustrated, realizing she was different from the others when it came to bust size. Akane jokingly suggested that Akane should just create a character, but Akane argued that such things couldn't be changed in real life. Kyo, however, disagreed, saying that with enough exercise, a healthy diet, and proper sleep, she could shape herself to be cuter. Akane bluntly told Akane that she had failed at making herself cute. Akane joked that she simply lacked the right materials to craft that item. After soaking in the bath, they helped each other wash up with soap and shampoo. While rinsing Eko's hair, Akane found it strange that a girl like Akane, who didn't take care of herself, had grown so much. Akane explained that she lived a soft, indulgent lifestyle, which made her body slightly squishy. Nanako commented that Eko's body was indeed soft and asked if she planned to go on a diet. Akane replied that as long as Hideki didn't dislike her, she had no interest in dieting. Akane pointed out that no one really knew what kind of body type Hideki preferred. He might actually like slimmer girls. Hearing this, Akane immediately grabbed her phone, determined to ask Hideki directly. She then announced that she was going to video call Hideki right then and there. Akane was completely dumbfounded by Akane's way of thinking. Akane insisted that she needed to let Hideki see them so he could decide which type of body he preferred. Kyo quickly stepped in, saying she wouldn't allow that to happen. But Akane begged them not to stop her, claiming that this was an important quest to determine Hideki's preference. Kyo and Akane tried to stop Akane because what she was doing could disrupt the harmony of the guild. Akane ran away as Akane and Kyo chased after her, trying to snatch her phone. Just as Akane managed to grab hold of Akane, Nanako called out to Akane, telling her to throw the phone to her. The moment Nanako caught the phone, she immediately ended the video call. Akane called her a traitor. Nanako explained that Hideki didn't even answer the video call. Akane said that if Hideki had picked up, it would have been a total disaster. Fortunately, Hideki was able to read the situation. Kyo added that Hideki understood how critical the situation was, and without him, Akane could completely lose control. That night, the four of them slept in Kyo's room. Akane was amazed at Kyo's huge bed, which could fit all of them. Nanako even said that their experience that day felt like a cultural exchange. Kyo mentioned that no one had ever said that to her before, since they were the first guests she had ever invited to her house. She was really happy that Akane, and Nanako could come over. Akane commented that the four of them were friends. Akane said that it was her first time staying over at a friend's house, and she was really excited. Nanako, curious, asked if Akane was really happy. Then she started tickling Akane. Nanako also asked why everyone kept calling her by her in-game username. Akane explained that it had just become a habit. Akane realized that doing all this without Hideki was actually fun, but Akane still preferred sleeping with Hideki instead of anyone else because they were already married. Nanako was baffled by Akane's mindset since their marriage was just in the game. She asked if Akane really considered marriage in the game the same as real-life marriage. Akane called it a terrifying question. Nanako was surprised that Kyo and Akane had never asked Akane that before. Kyo admitted that she was too scared to bring it up. She gave an analogy. If Nanako stared into a deep abyss, the abyss would stare back at her. But unfortunately, Nanako still didn't get it. Akane then told Nanako to imagine Akane and her were married, and as a married couple, they played Legendary Age together. Since there was an in-game marriage system that gave bonuses, Nanako suggested to Akane that they get married in the game. With that analogy, Akane asked what the three of them thought about it. Akane said it sounded weird. Kyo pointed out that since they were already married, there was no reason to get married again. Nanako then stated that she wouldn't want to marry anyone else because that would be considered cheating. Their responses to Akane's question ended up backfiring on them. Akane began to think that she kind of understood Akane's feelings. Nanako didn't want to think about it, but now she couldn't help it. Kyo started to realize that Akane was influencing them. Akane called them all mean, saying she was only giving an analogy. Akane accused Akane of brainwashing them. They all then realized just how much they actually needed Hideki. That night, they logged into their online game and met up with Rusian to complain about the predicament they were facing. That day, Rusian told his friends about his past experience when he used to join pickup parties. He and his party members once went to fight a dragon monster, but since they only had one healer, the healing rate couldn't keep up, and the entire party got wiped out. The healer Isana kept apologizing even though it wasn't really her fault. Rusien felt like he should have said that relying on just one healer was actually a bit troublesome. He'd hoped Isana wouldn't take it too seriously and quit the game. A few months later, Isana joined another pickup party. When the party leader asked if she was okay being the only healer, Isana said she was fine. Since things had gone badly before, Rusien took the initiative to say that having only one healer was tough, so he asked his party members to be more careful not to put too much pressure on Isana. After that, Isana sent in a private message thanking him. After hearing this story, Akko assumed that Rusien was just talking about his ex-girlfriend, but Rusien was actually trying to show that some people find it hard to ask for help when they need it. Akko started to understand. According to Rusien, when someone feels burdened, sometimes they need a bit of kindness from others to realize it and accept help. Rusien then asked if Akko understood what he was feeling. He mentioned that summer break was almost over and school was about to start again. He asked Akko to tell everyone that they weren't actually married but were just regular friends. Upon hearing that, Akko said Rusien was saying nonsense and brushed it off as a joke, even though Rusien was seriously asking for her help. That day was the first day of school after summer vacation. Hideki felt really hot in class. He commented on how tanned Sou's skin had become, to which So replied that Hideki's skin was still as pale as ever. Suddenly, Akane showed up and called Hideki, pulling him out of the classroom by the collar. Watching that scene, So commented that seeing Hideki getting choked by Akane like that really made it feel like school had started again. Hideki and Akane chatted by the stairs. Akane complained about how they couldn't just skip past the awkward small talk with classmates after summer break, something she compared to unskippable cutscenes in bad games. Hideki was surprised that this was what had been bothering her. Akane admitted she had no idea how she managed to act like a normal high school student in the first semester. She couldn't even remember. Nanako then arrived and greeted them. She asked if Akane and Hideki were dating since they were alone together. Hideki immediately asked her not to say things like that because if Akko heard, she might lock herself up. Akane clarified that they were just having a normal conversation. Nanako found it odd that if it was just a normal conversation, why not have it in the classroom? Annoyed, Akane snapped that it wasn't any of Nanako's business and called her a summoner who liked betraying her own teammates. Akane told Nanako she could only talk to her again if she abandoned her pet, Muton, on the mountain. Nanako was confused about what was so bad about Muton, saying that her cat was really well behaved. Akane argued that Muton was a menace, running wild and dragging monsters right in front of them before instantly getting them all killed in the online game. Nanako got frustrated and stormed off. Akane then asked Hideki why Akko hadn't arrived yet. She was looking forward to teasing her to make up. Just then, Hideki's phone rang. It was Akko calling. Akko asked why no one had logged in that day. Hideki couldn't believe she had completely forgotten that school had already started that morning. That day, Kyo gave a speech during the opening ceremony for the first day of school after summer break in the gymnasium. Akko arrived at school in the middle of the event. After the ceremony ended, she went to find Hideki. Hideki jokingly praised her method of skipping school by staying home and just calling him instead. Akko was happy that she came to school because Hideki had said he wanted to see her face. Akane, watching their lovey-dovey interaction, looked annoyed. School went on as usual that day. After classes ended, Hideki and his friends headed back to the clubroom. Akane even really missed her war machine. She asked Hideki how much of his lost equipment he had managed to recover. Hideki said he had only gotten about 20% of it back. Akko then asked whether Hideki had found any better items while searching for the lost ones. Hearing that, Akane got angry. Hideki reasoned that after successfully crafting equipment, sometimes there was a feeling of regret, like wishing for a different enchant result or realizing he could have bought a different item for the same price. He meant that as just a minor change. Akane insisted that Hideki should just use the old equipment and told him to buy it again and equip it immediately. Not long after, Ms. Yui came into the clubroom and asked Hideki and his friends what they thought about the second semester. Hideki said he was thinking about fairly distributing the rewards from the summer event. Akane said she was looking forward to collecting pumpkins during the Halloween event. Kyo mentioned surveying the market to prepare for the big fall update, while Akko unexpectedly brought up the Christmas event with Rusien. However, what Ms. Yui actually meant was school-related matters, not the game. Ms. Yui then informed them that in September, Megasaki High School would be hosting the Sakikosai Cultural Festival. However, Hideki and his friends didn't seem very excited about it, which made Ms. Yui wonder why they weren't thrilled about a school festival. Kyo admitted that although it was a bit of a hassle, they couldn't ignore it. She also asked everyone to participate in the festival. Kyo wanted the online gaming club to showcase their achievements. Hideki jokingly said that the club's biggest achievement was getting Akko to attend school. Akane even added that their main attraction should just be Akko. Akko couldn't even imagine what that would be like. Akane concluded that the club members just needed to come up with another result to showcase. Kyo then suggested that they should stage a massive war, making their victory the club's official achievement. This large-scale war would be a massive guild battle, a weekly PvP event. Kyo stated that every club member would participate. Akko then asked how they would present it at the cultural festival. Kyo explained that the winner of the large-scale war would hold the castle for a week, with their guild emblem displayed prominently. She planned to use their school emblem as their guild's flag, so the online gaming club members would take a commemorative photo in front of it. That photo would then be used on their display panel. That evening, Hideki and Akko walked home together. Akko said she wasn't looking forward to the large-scale war they discussed earlier, especially since she wouldn't be able to win. Hideki then asked why she seemed so happy. Akko admitted that although she didn't enjoy attending school that semester, she was happy because she got to walk home with Hideki. Rusien then asked what Akko's class was planning for the cultural festival. Akko said that her class was setting up a food stand near the school that would serve delicious treats. That day, Rusien and Akko were asked to spar, but they just stood there staring at each other. Akko said she couldn't bring herself to hit Rusien. Akane told her it was just training, and Kyo even commented that staring at each other like a couple wasn't real practice. Rusien explained that his attack power wasn't strong enough to defeat Akko in a single hit, so he was trying to carefully lower her health with precise attacks. When Akko finally tried to strike Rusien, she was suddenly sent flying. Her attack had bounced back onto her. Rusien quickly told Akko to heal herself. Their sweet interaction made Schwein, Akane, sick, so she immediately charged at Rusien with her sword. Rusien quickly blocked her attack, and Akko immediately cast an extra damage healing spell on him. With a single attack, Rusien brought Schwein's health down to critical levels. Akane admitted that Rusien and Akko were way too strong. Rusien apologized, saying it had become a habit between them. After he stunned an opponent, he would always tell Akko to use extra damage. Rusien's stun skill was extremely powerful, but once used, it had a cooldown period before he could use it again. Akane then drank a recovery potion, and despite her earlier frustration, said that thanks to Akko and Rusien's attacks, she was now feeling fired up. Apricot declared that it was finally time for him to fight Schwein. The battle between Schwein and Apricot began, with Apricot showcasing his incredibly powerful magic. Akko and Rusien were both surprised. Apricot had just started the fight, and he was already unleashing his ultimate move. Apricot launched a meteor attack straight at Schwein, causing a massive explosion. However, Schwein managed to avoid the attack effortlessly, as he could easily read area-based magic. Apricot was confused as to why Schwein didn't step into his magic zone, as monsters would usually fall right into the trap. Schwein smirked and told him that he wasn't just some ordinary monster. The moment Apricot tried to attack again, Schwein disappeared and reappeared right in front of him, taking him down in an instant. Apricot was in complete disbelief. How could he lose to Schwein despite being a guild master? Akko quickly revived Apricot. Next, it was Apricot versus Rusien. Rusien repeatedly threw his shield, and before long, Apricot was defeated once again. Akko revived him once more. Then, it was Apricot against Akko. Apricot prepared his meteor spell, which terrified Akko, who was convinced she was about to be annihilated. However, Rusien calmed her down and told her to use her special skill. Akko activated her sealing skill against Apricot, and once again, Apricot was defeated. After reviving him yet again, Apricot couldn't believe how he kept losing so easily. Rusien explained that it was because Schwein specialized in close combat and was their best player versus player PvP fighter. If a magic user like Apricot went up against Schwein in a one-on-one battle, it was practically guaranteed they would lose. Meanwhile, as a tank, Rusien had a stun skill that could lock enemies down, and Akko had a balanced status that made her more suited for PvP battles. In short, magic users like Apricot were not ideal for PvP combat. Apricot argued that he had read online that mages could single-handedly wipe out all enemies on the first floor. Rusien explained that PvP battles required specialized equipment and specific playstyles. Apricot then asked if Rusien was implying that their guild wasn't suited for PvP combat, and Rusien admitted that was exactly the case. Kyo had checked and confirmed that Apricot was indeed not suited for PvP. Instead, she was considering creating a new character. Akane mentioned that she had tried dueling a friend who was experienced in PvP battles but had lost horribly. Hideki said he was getting used to PvP fights through his own skills, but he lacked proper equipment. Akko asked how many large-scale battles there would be before the festival. Hideki replied that since they occurred every week, there would be roughly 3 more before the festival. Akane sighed, saying it sounded impossible. Hideki suggested that if they failed, they could change their festival presentation to something else like a gaming discussion panel. Akane immediately refused, saying she wouldn't attend. And as the student council president, Kyo wouldn't accompany them either. Ako, on the other hand, preferred to just play games in the club room with Hideki. Kyo told them they needed to do their best and prepare their equipment, confident they would participate in the next large-scale battle. The day of the big battle had finally arrived. This was the first major operation for the Alley Cat Guild, to storm the Shining Blade Templar Fortress. The fortress was currently controlled by a guild known as the Cleaning Squad. Rusian was sure they were strong since they had been able to defend the castle, and Apricot warned everyone not to underestimate them, or they would end up getting wiped out like trash. The large-scale battle was about to begin. Apricot reminded everyone not to get overly greedy or too fearful. As they prepared to charge in, they realized other guilds had already started their attacks. Apricot instructed them to observe how the other guilds fought. The other guilds began assaulting the fortress walls, but they were immediately wiped out in just 10 seconds. Shuan was shocked. There were so many attackers, yet they were all eliminated that quickly. Ako suggested they retreat, but Apricot refused, insisting they had to try before giving up. They charged forward, only to be instantly obliterated by the fortress's defenses. However, since there were no penalties for dying, they could keep trying again. At one point, Ako accidentally hit another player on the head with her staff and quickly apologized. But instead of accepting the apology, the player attacked her. Furious, Rusian and Shuan stepped in to challenge the player. Unfortunately, Apricot was too slow to stop them, and since they were outnumbered, they were immediately wiped out once again. They decided to try again. Apricot felt that they needed to break through the stalemate, so she suggested gathering materials to craft heavy weapons to destroy the walls and launch an attack. For example, they could build a giant catapult that required 5 players to operate. However, they lacked the necessary personnel. Apricot quickly ran off, declaring that she would use cash items, which had been banned until now because she believed this situation called for it. Rusian, however, strongly opposed using cash items in the large-scale war, and the result ended up being the same as before. Shuan insisted that he would never use such valuable items as they were extremely expensive. Rusian even pointed out that selling them on the market and upgrading their equipment would be a better option. Shuan took this opportunity to push Apricot to stop relying on cash items. Not long after, the elite forces of the Nekohime Guild suddenly arrived to join the large-scale war. They wanted to seize the fortress as an offering to their goddess, Nekohime. They immediately launched an assault, and Nekohime shouted in protest, saying she had never wanted them to do this in the first place. The Nekohime forces clashed with the Maid troops defending the fortress. It turned out that the Nekohime troops were incredibly strong, seemingly composed of professional players. Before long, they successfully raised their flag and took control of the fortress. However, despite their efforts, the elite Nekohime forces were eventually overpowered by an even larger guild. Back at the base camp, the members of the Alley Cat Guild started referring to Nekohime as a goddess and an angel. Nekohime explained that she had only casually mentioned the idea of capturing the fortress, but her elite troops had immediately rushed into attack. The next day at school, Rusian and his friends were preparing their class's presentation for the cultural festival. Suddenly, Ako's voice echoed through the room as she loudly protested. It turned out that their class's festival presentation had been changed from serving delicious food to actually preparing the food themselves. The students in the class also started discussing how to make a profit, and they decided to have the girls serve the guests with a maid cafe concept. Ako was forced into the role of the head maid. According to Akane, regular people tended to associate otakus with maids. Ako was pressured by her classmates to find maid uniforms, create a work schedule, draft a service guide, and take care of everything else related to the cafe. Akane suggested asking Kyo for help with the maid uniforms. Meanwhile, Rusian cheered Ako on, encouraging her to do her best in her new role. The next day, Nanako showed up at the online gaming club room. It turned out that Kyo had invited her because they were in need of more members. Kyo had even ordered an extra PC for Nanako and their teacher, Yui. Nanako was excited to help out with the online gaming club. Rusian and the others prepared for their mission that day, but unfortunately, Sade hadn't brought Mouton for it. Apricot announced that their target for the day would be Cantor Fortress, the smallest one available. The guild that owned it was a small group called Emperor's Sword, which had only 20 members while their own guild had 6. Apricot had a plan. She intended to recruit reinforcements from the top guild on their server, Wallenstein. That day, the Alley Cat Guild, with the help of the Wallenstein Guild, set their sights on a small fortress controlled by Emperor's Sword. Wallenstein was the top guild on the server with all their player versus player equipment maxed out. The two guilds greeted each other, and Wallenstein's guild leader, Boats, apologized for not being able to form an alliance too close to the fortress, so he chose a spot a little farther away. The leaders of both guilds shook hands as a sign of their alliance. Mizuki, Wallenstein's healer, asked Akko if she wanted to split their healing duties. Akko would handle sacrament, while Mizuki would take care of concentration. Akko was confused at first, so Mizuki clarified that Eiko should heal 5 teammates while she handled the rest. Nekohime cheered Akko on, encouraging her to do her best. Still puzzled, Akko asked if Ms. Yui wasn't going to help her. Ms. Yui simply said that this was an extracurricular activity and that she was just there to observe. Bots looked at Sade and called in a low-level player with weak armor. He wanted Sade to follow his commands, and Sade obeyed without hesitation. As for Schwain, Bots ordered him to charge forward and perform a ran-ran. Nanako, confused, asked the others what that meant, thinking it sounded fun. Hideki explained that Bots was telling Schwein to rush in and spam the rampage skill as much as possible. Akane summarized it by saying that they just didn't want Schwein to think too much and instead swing his sword like an idiot. Schwein agreed and told them not to underestimate the power of his sword. Bots then instructed the Alley Cat Guild to simply follow his lead. Apricot asked if that was all they had to do, to which Bots replied that the fortress they were targeting was ridiculously easy to take. Nanako turned to Hideki and mentioned that the Wallenstein Guild seemed like a bunch of villains, and Akane agreed. Hideki told them not to judge people they had just met too quickly. Before long, the 2 guilds arrived near Cantor Fortress. Bots told Seti and Akko to split up and run along opposite sides of the fortress. Akko asked why they had to do that, but Bots insisted they just do it and return later. Rusian advised Akko and Seti to follow Bots' orders and see what would happen. As Akko and Seti ran along their designated paths, enemy attacks rained down on them, drawing fire away from the frontline fighters. It was only then that Eiko realized they had been used as bait. It was a ruthless tactic, but Hideki admitted that it was a smart move. Kyo also acknowledged the strategy's effectiveness, using non-combat members as decoys to thin out the enemy forces, but she didn't like fighting that way. Bots announced that they had successfully disrupted the enemy's formation. Schwein then urged Rusian to charge in. The 2 of them sprinted toward the fortress, blocking incoming attacks with their swords and shields. Soon the elite enemy guards emerged. Kyo cheered for Rusian and Schwein, telling them not to die. Schwein was fired up, eager to test his sword's power against the enemy. Meanwhile, Rusian was determined to showcase all the training he had been doing. But just as he was about to face off against an opponent, the enemy was effortlessly slain by Bots. Akane was stunned, unable to comprehend how quickly the attack had happened. Hideki remarked that Bots was amazing, knowing exactly how the enemy would move. That was likely why Wallenstein was known as the best player versus player guild. Suddenly, the entire Wallenstein Guild launched an all-out assault on the enemy forces. With their powerful skills, they quickly wiped out the opposition. Hideki realized that Wallenstein didn't even need Alley Cat's help to win the battle. Meanwhile, Akito and Seti were still running along the fortress walls. When they finally made it inside, the Alley Cat members were shocked to find that Bots had already defeated Emperor Sword's leader. Bots mockingly called the Alley Cat Guild slow. He then proceeded to destroy Emperor Sword's crystal and told Apricot to place their own. Once Apricot set down the crystal, Cantor Fortress officially fell under the control of the Alley Cat Guild. Bots said that he and the others would return to town to restock their supplies. Apricot immediately instructed her guild members to stay alert, as there was a possibility that Emperor Sword would attempt to reclaim the fortress. However, Bots assured them not to worry about that because he would handle it himself. He even told Alley Cat to just sit back and have fun. The large-scale war would end in 10 more minutes. Akko remarked that they had taken control quite easily. To Hideki, it didn't feel like an accomplishment. Even Yui-sensei wouldn't have expected things to go this way. Nanako also commented that it wasn't enjoyable at all. For Akane, the most important thing was that they had taken pictures, and now they were all set to showcase them at the cultural festival. She didn't expect it to be this easy. Kyo reminded everyone not to let their guard down yet since the battle wasn't over. Hideki encouraged the group to focus on defending until Bots returned. Not long after, a sudden notification appeared, announcing that the alliance between Alley Cat and Wallenstein had ended. Akane was confused as to why the alliance had dissolved when the large-scale war hadn't finished yet. It turned out that if all members of one guild left the captured location, the alliance would automatically be dissolved, meaning that Wallenstein could now attack their fortress. Shortly after, Bots arrived and killed Nekohime. He then moved on to take down Sade. Rusian tried to attack him but failed to stop Bots' advance. Schwein was also easily defeated by Bots. Rusian made another attempt to fight him, but Bots quickly took him out as well. After that, he eliminated Apricot. Bako could only stand there in shock, watching all her friends get taken down right before her eyes. Bots then placed his guild's crystal, officially taking over Camper Fortress for Wallenstein. Bots remarked that the battle had been incredibly easy. With that, the large-scale war came to an end. Apricot, filled with frustration, questioned how Bots could betray them. Bots simply replied that it was more interesting that way. Apricot couldn't do anything but admit that she had failed to see the true nature of Wallenstein's members. She then told her guildmates that it was time to leave. Saying a quick farewell, Apricot and the others walked away. Bots was surprised by their reaction. He had expected the Alley Cat members to be furious with him, but instead they didn't seem to take it seriously. Meanwhile, Yui-sensei was irritated, feeling guilty for allowing her students to go through yet another unpleasant experience. That evening, Nanako and Akane walked home together. Nanako wondered how things had turned out so strangely.